Hey everybody, welcome to the challenge. All right, so you guys are ready getting into the chat? Sweet. Okay, perfect. You guys are ready ahead of the game. So if you guys are in the chat, tell me obviously your name and where you're coming from around the world. We got a bunch of people that are joining this challenge, and I'm super excited to see where we got people going. So let's see, we got Renee, London, UK. And then, by the way, there's a prize for the person who's furthest away from where I am, which is in Florida. All right, let's see. Hey, Cheyenne, you're from Florida as well. Awesome. We got Marianne. We got, let's see, Ashley from Alabama. Let's see, Austin, Texas. James, welcome, man. We got Alicia from Virginia. Man, this is going so fast, I can barely read this stuff, guys. All right. Sam from Houston. Ashkai from Germany. All right. I think you're winning. Oh, Raj from India. You're definitely taking the cake right now, man. Okay, let's see. We got another Michael from Florida. South Wales, UK. Travis, welcome. We got Singapore. All right. Qatar. All right, Amber, welcome. Let's see what else we got here, guys. Cody from Vancouver. We got Rafa from Toronto. We have Narjas from Cali. All right, welcome. Tiffany from Bermuda. Christina from Mexico City. Welcome, Christina. Cameron from St. Petersburg. I'm guessing that's Florida, not Russia. Manisha from Miami. Welcome, Manisha. Glad you're here, fellow Floridian. All right, guys, keep on coming in. We're going to wait a couple minutes because, as you can tell, people are still jumping on right now into the challenge. So I'm going to give a couple minutes, get as many people as possible locked in before we get started. So keep on jumping in. Tell me your name, where you're from, and then we're going to jump right into the presentation. So keep it going. All right, Laura from Colombia. Welcome, Laura. Jose from Tijuana and San Diego. Welcome, Jose. Awesome. All right, guys, keep on coming in. We got Oscar from Sacramento. All right. Mexico City, Christina. Very nice. Timon. Okay, Timon saying welcome to Christina. Sweet. Jeremy in Vegas. Victor from Spain. I'm thinking right now that India is going to be the winner today. Oh, Bart, you're from Mars. Okay, I guess Bart wins. He's tuning in from Mars. That Nora from New York. Welcome. All right. We got Harrison from Columbia, South Carolina. Harrison, I actually used to live in Columbia. I was stationed at Fort Jackson back when I was in the Army days. So spent a couple years there. Philadelphia, we got John, Chicago, Leo, we got Tolu from Canada, Estero, Florida, Gonzalo, you're close by to me. I'm Southwest Florida as well. All right, guys, keep it going. We're just almost at 500 people joining the call right now. This is great. Awesome. Keep it coming, guys. Name and where you're from. We still got people jumping in to the room. We'll do a start in another minute, and we'll get started. All right? All right, we got 35 Golf. Daryl from Atlanta. Thank you for your service, man. Appreciate it. Hey, there we go. We're over 500. Thank you for celebrating there, Leo. Okay, let's keep it going, guys. See how many other people are going to join us tonight. Remember, this is night one of 3 nights. Okay, so this is just the beginning. We're going to be talking about sourcing deals today. How do you find these deals? Coming up with a target. We're going to get to that in a second. And then we have Wednesday night, and then we're going to have Thursday night, which is the last night. So it's 3 nights. So make sure you guys are blocking off your calendar, making sure we spend a lot of time together this week with each other, going through this entire strategy and how to go about acquiring these businesses. So awesome, guys. I appreciate it. We're still climbing. Okay, we're 5 minutes past the hour, so we're actually going to get started. I don't know if I can wait too much longer. And let's get going. I'm going to start sharing my screen. All right, here you guys go. Okay. So, welcome everybody. This is the first day of the challenge, which is how to buy a 6-figure business with little to zero money out of your pocket in the next 6 months. Okay, so that's our target. Now, as I mentioned, this is day one of the challenge. Okay, and so over the next 3 days, you're going to be learning the entire process on how to go and acquire your first 6 or 7-figure business, and then how to make it work for you so that you can continue acquiring more and more businesses to build up your cash flowing portfolio. Okay, so we're going to go over how to find the right businesses to acquire, how to analyze deals like a pro, right? We're going to go through those strategies, how to effectively reach out to motivated sellers, how to fund your first acquisition using other people's money. So you're going to see that term OPM. It means other people's money. How to close on your first deal and start earning cash flow immediately, and much more. Now, these 3 days, this is how it's going to be broken. And it's imperative that you guys join me if you can for these 3 days, because we're going over 3 distinct segments when it comes to acquiring your first business. Day one, which is tonight, we're going over deal sourcing mastery, right? How to find and target the perfect business for you. Tomorrow, we're doing due diligence decoded. We're going through how do you analyze these deals like a pro, so you know a good deal from a bad deal. Day 3, zero down funding strategies. How do we fund these deals? How do we do it with little to zero money out of our own pocket, right? So by day 3, you're going to have a complete roadmap to acquire your first boring business with little to zero out of pocket. Now, Today we're going to go over the 3 pillars. We're going to go over how to reverse engineer the perfect business for you. Okay, we're going to go through that formula. The secret to finding off-market deals, my proven outreach scripts, how to build a network of brokers. And then by the end of today, guys, you should know exactly how to go get started looking for the right deal. Day 2, we're going to do the 2-minute technique to evaluate a business. We're going to learn about the golden ratio, any critical red flags that you guys right off the bat when we're looking at a listing, how to structure your offer for maximum leverage, and also we're going to do a live 7-figure acquisition breakdown tomorrow. One of my students who actually worked with me is going to come on and he's going to talk about how he acquired a $2.1 million accounting firm. By the way, he's not an accountant, okay? So he acquired an accounting firm for 2.1, and it's going to net him over $1 million in his first year. He's going to be on tomorrow, and you guys can ask him questions as well. So after tomorrow, you have the confidence to analyze these deals and identify cash cows from those deals that are hits, like you're going to lose your money on. So we're going to tell you the difference between the two. The last day, we're going over the step-by-step SBA loan process, creative financing techniques, leveraging seller financing, how to use your own cash flow to pay for your acquisition, and the art of raising capital. All of those techniques are going to be talked about on day 3. All right, so what this does not include, okay, so this is key. The strategy that I'm talking about tonight does not include investing huge lump sums into building your own business, okay? Building a business from the ground up, taking on a ton of upfront risk, having any fancy degrees or certifications, have any prior experience owning a business, or going through all the guesswork that I did that took me over 18 months, wasted over $10,000 in the process, until I finally realized how to go about doing this. So there's 3 myths that I think hold the majority of people back when they start thinking about acquisitions and going about acquiring their first deal. Okay, so we're going to talk about those 3 myths and get to the bottom of them to show that why they're a myth and why they are simply not true. So myth number 1, I need millions to buy a business. This is the myth that actually kept me from even thinking about this as a viable prospect back when I was in the military and then when I was working in banking. It wasn't until I actually saw a lot of my clients in banking, and we'll talk about that in a second, how they were expanding their net worth by 2x, 3x in a single year by acquiring businesses. It wasn't until I saw that I realized that this is something that not only obviously people with money could do, but the strategies they were using didn't include all their millions of dollars put up front, right? They were doing this with little money down. And so I saw that this is a way that I could get into it. So the myth number 1 is that you need a huge amount of money to do this. You do not. We're going to go through that on day 3 especially. We're going to talk about how we fund these deals. Myth number 2, I need years of business experience. You don't need business experience, okay? So one thing I want you guys to understand on this part is that most of you out there, you've had jobs, okay? On those jobs, you're a part of a team, and you do a specific skill set as part of the team. You're solving some type of problem on a daily basis. So you've already had a skill, most likely, that has been used to make a business successful. So it's about learning how to identify that skill that you have and then being able to apply it to an acquisition so that you can go out there and utilize that to acquire your first business. Myth 3, I'll be working 70-hour weeks if I buy a business. So the goal isn't just buying a business, right? If that was the case, this would be a lot easier than what it actually is. Because we're not only going out there and buying businesses, we're doing it so that we can go out and repeat the process, which means that we're not buying a 70-hour week or 40-hour week job. We are doing this to target the right type of businesses so that we can go out there and acquire them and not have a full-time job. And so that makes it that much more of a complex strategy because we have to look for the right type. And this is 1 or 2 businesses out of 100 are going to fit what we're looking for. All right. And so the key here is looking for the right type of business, that's the right type of management, so that when you buy it, you are not the person who's running the day to day. So this method now has not just worked for me. At this point, it's been hundreds of my students, right, that have gone through this process and are acquiring businesses. So those businesses that they acquired, they're going to continue on, whether they're growing the portfolio or whether they're going to hold them for a couple of years and then flip them for a profit. Whatever the strategy that they're doing, this process that we're going to go through is not just something that I've done personally. It's now been worked over hundreds of times. So some of my students, guys, in some of these videos, you can go on trustpilot.com or .com/acquisition ace. You can go on there. You can look at a lot of these testimonials, but that's Dave. He ended up acquiring a $10 million accounting firm. You got Hemo here, who acquired an engineering firm. You got Carl here, who's about to close on a auto body shop. And then you have John here, who acquired a trucking company that tows semi-trucks. So it's a towing company that focuses on towing semi-trucks. All those, again, you can go to my YouTube channel or you can go check those out on Trustpilot. So the massive opportunity. I don't think I can overstate what the opportunity is right now. From today and for about 10 years into the future. We're looking at a point in history where the largest generation, the baby boomer generation, right? A lot of our grandparents' age and parents' ages now that are retired. And they own 1/3 of all businesses. This is about $15 trillion transfer of wealth that has to happen. 1/3 of all US-based businesses are owned by a baby boomer. In the next 10 years, they're retiring and they have to give them away, right? That's 1/3 of all the businesses. Now, by learning this strategy, by understanding, 1, about how to identify the right business to acquire, and learn once you've acquired it, how to run it, and then go acquire more. Learning this right now is what the massive opportunity is, because this is going to be a massive opportunity for the next decade. After that, of course, there's going to be businesses for sale. But right now, there's going to be more businesses that come on the market than ever before. So if you understand this and you realize that there's not enough buyers that are able to go and buy these, it means that the buyer has all the power between now, the last year, all the way for the next 10 years. So that's what we're trading for. So let's look at this by the numbers. 10,000 baby boomers retire every single day. There's 12 million boomer-owned businesses, right? So baby boomers that own businesses that are going to sell, or they're just going to close, right? Or pass down to their children. Now, only 30% listed for sale actually sell. And the reason is not because it's a hard market. It's because there's a lack of buyers. So there's such an overabundance of supply, and there's not enough demand, which is why you learning how to do this and me doing this, you're able to exploit that arbitrage between supply and demand, and we're going to be able to go into this market where we have a lot of leverage to get good deals done. So where else do you feel, and I want you guys to ask this question to yourselves right now, where else do you feel confident deploying your capital in this market? Stocks, potentially, crypto, maybe, real estate, right? Think through it. Where else do you feel confident? Now, by the end of this training, you're going to understand why acquiring businesses is by far the best place to put your capital. I'm just going to show you, we're going to look at the numbers, and it's going to be very plain to see as we go through this. So this information is valuable. The information I'm putting out right now, everybody who's listening right now, the information I'm putting out is not available other places, okay? You can find it in some words and some books. Buy Then Build is a great book to read through. You can see some of the information I'm talking about there. There's some YouTube videos out there that you can find some of this information. There's places online like my Instagram and others where they're kind of talking about this. But this is a very hard thing to find the whole entire strategy just encompassed into a trade, okay? So I want you guys to just understand that, and I'm going to try to give as much value as I possibly can to make sure that you guys can take this away and be able to utilize it, all right? And I hope that, I know I'm going to talk fast, but I want to get through so much information, so make sure that you guys are ready. Over the next 3 days, we're going to cover everything about sourcing, evaluating, and funding a deal, okay? But the first thing that I'm going to do is talk about why do we want to listen to me? Why are we here, okay? So my name is Ben Kelly, and I've owned 6 businesses. These net me around 850K a year now in profit. Okay, the goal is, my first goal is to hit $1 million, and then from there, that goal is going to change. You guys can see me in the picture. That's my beautiful wife, my 3 kids, Kai, Eliana, and Selah. And the story kind of started about a few years ago. I was working at JP Morgan, and specifically, I noticed that I worked in the private bank, so I was dealing with a lot of the high net worth individuals. And I noticed that most of the 8-9-figure clients were doing something to grow their wealth, and that was acquiring businesses. They had stocks, they had real estate, but the thing that they were actively doing was going out and acquiring more and more businesses, and they were doubling and tripling their net worth in a very short period of time. So I saw that, and I said, okay, they're doing something, and they're now, I'm looking at their portfolios, I see how much money they're worth, I see that they're doing something right. A lot of these people too, they didn't have any kind of crazy certifications or degrees. These were just hardworking people that realized that this was something to do, and they just focused on it. And these guys are building their network 10 million, 50 million, 100 million plus. And I just saw what was being done in front of me. So I'm not a genius. I'm not someone who came up with this from scratch. This was just seeing it happen in front of me enough times to where I said, okay, I need to figure this out. So a few years later, you guys can see some of the brands below that I own. I can say that it works. It works for me, and it works for the people that I taught and brought along the way. Now, this is what my life looks like, which is a lot different than a few years ago, right? This is some of those pictures of me and my family. That's at Versailles in France this summer, traveling around. So the cool thing is, now I took off a couple months this summer just to take my family out to Italy, and we had a blast. We stopped in Paris. We did a lot of fun things. The whole point of this is not to brag about all this different stuff, but it's talking about how do you focus all of these things to where you get to the goal, right? We're going to talk about this right now in the first section of the training about how you set your goal up. Everyone here is going to have a goal. That goal could be a cash flow goal. That could be I want to only work 10 hours a week goal. It could be I want to be able to spend the summers somewhere different than where I live, right? Whatever the goal is. You're going to figure that out, and you're going to figure out the steps to get there, okay? I'm going to break that down and how that works. So why this training exists. This information, as you guys can see, it changed me from where I was a few years ago to where I am now. And so this training, it's going to be right now, we're going to charge through it. It's going to take 45 minutes to an hour. We're going to try to hit it as hard as we can. Make sure that you guys are taking notes because it's going to be fast and furious. So close out all the unnecessary tabs, put your phone away, take diligent notes. And if you guys are ready right now, comment me in the chat. Tell me you're ready for the training, okay? I want to make this interactive. Otherwise, it's boring just hearing my voice the entire time. So make sure that you are interacting with me. So put me in the chat. Tell me that you guys are ready, and we're going to be jumping right into the training. All right. All right, guys. Everyone's ready. Okay, I've seen a bunch of these come in the chat. Let's do it. All right, I saw that, Steve. You say, let's do it. Let's go. Okay, roll call. What is your experience when it comes to business acquisition? Okay, so I want you guys to put number 1 through 5 in the chat. Number 1, you never heard about it. 2, you've heard about it, but you've done a little research. 3, you've done a good bit of research. You just haven't gone down the path of business acquisition yet. 4, you've acquired one business, but you want to do more. And 5, you've done this a bunch of times and you want to join to hear me talk about this topic, right? 1 through 5. I want to see in the chat where you guys are at. Okay, we got a bunch of 2s, a bunch of 3s. So people, you have heard about business acquisition. You just haven't gone down the pathway yet. Oh, we got Naveed. Congrats, Naveed. You got 1 deal done. Good stuff. Okay, let's see what else we got here. All right, good. So a lot of 3s, a lot of 2s, and on that way. Good. Okay. So let's move on. Okay, here we go. Let's take some notes. So here's the 3-step process. Tonight we were going to learn the 3-step system for identifying a acquisition opportunity and how to build a network of brokers that are going to bring lucrative deals to you. Okay, so the goal here is getting brokers to do their job and to send deals to you instead of you constantly having to chase them. All right. Now, if I can go back and do what I'm talking about right now and how to kind of build this pipeline, this deal pipeline network, I would probably be double where I am in terms of the amount of acquisitions I've done. But I did it. Right? I had to learn the hard way, which is typically, sad to say, in my life, that's usually how I have to learn. So now at this point, our system is dialed in, and we're going to dive into exactly how we do this. So step 1, determining cash flow requirement. The first step in building your ideal business. It's going to be crucial for targeting the right businesses. It's going to ensure that the business is going to meet your financial goals. Okay. There's no reason to do all this work and go through 6 months of trying to acquire a business if it's not going to meet your goals in the end. And number 3, sets the foundation for your search criteria. Okay, so we're going to break down how we're going to target that cash flow right now. So here is how we do backwards engineering. So for you guys out there that like math, this is going to be good for you. For those of you that don't like math, make sure that you have a pen and paper. Follow along with what I'm trying to tell you. Start with your desired annual income from the business. Now this means cash in your pocket. This does not mean just revenue. It doesn't mean net profit. This is cash at the end of the day that you made from the business. Come up with that number. Now, you're going to have to account for debt service, okay? So because you're going to buy this company using debt, you're now that cash flow that you're looking for, the one you want to get to, you're going to have to minus that from another number to get that because the business might be making $400K before you buy it, but after you take out a loan to pay it, now it's only making maybe $275, okay? Because you have to pay the loan off every year. Okay, so you have to account for debt service. I'm going to do this by adding 50 to 75% to your target business cash flow. Okay, so in this example, 50% of 200,000 is 100,000. You would add that to the 200,000, and that would get you to around 300,000. Okay, same thing if you do the math for 75%, that would get you to 350. So you add that. That tells us right now by kind of doing that backwards math that we are looking for a business that is selling and advertising itself as making between 300 and 375K. Because we know that once we buy it and take out a loan to buy it, we're going to be making about 200K in our pocket. Okay, let's move on. So we're going to do another example here. Annual revenue of a business, $1 million. Now you're going to minus cost of goods, you're going to minus operating expenses, and that leaves us with $350,000 in cash flow. Now, this is a really simple example, right? We're going to look at, in the trading that we do, there's way more detail to get into P&Ls and how to read them and how to analyze them. But right now, though, we're just talking bare bones. 1 million minus 400,000 minus 250,000 equals 350,000. Now, we take that, and we're going to put this into an example of showing us how much a business like that would cost. So let's use a 3x multiple for our example. Typically, businesses are going to trade between 2 and 4x revenue. Cash flow. So we take 2 to 4x times the cash flow. In this example, the cash flow is 350,000. Okay, so we're going to take that and multiply by 3, and that's going to give us a total purchase price of $1,050,000. So as we did the math before, we know that if we go after that business for $1,050,000 and we buy it, and it said it was doing $350K in cash flow, after all this said and done, we should be walking away with $200,000 a year in our pocket. Okay, it's a simple example, but it's just to show you how we can kind of guess where you need to come at in order to fulfill your financial goal to make it worth your time. Okay. All right, SBA loans. Now, they're one of the best ways to finance your acquisition with minimal cash out of pocket. It's not the only way. There are other conventional loans out there, but they take more money out of your pocket, more of a down payment in order for you to go and complete it. So SBA loans are pretty good. Now, there's pros to SBA loans and cons, but I feel as doing this myself and helping out hundreds of people do this, SBA loans, there are more pros than there are cons. So they're government-backed. They give pretty favorable terms. Typically require 10% down, but we can get that down to 5%. It's the way that we structure seller notes. Can finance up to 90%, sometimes up to 95%. And terms usually are 10 years or more, and there's competitive interest rates. Okay, so this is the product that most of us are using for a lot of the deals that are happening. Now let's take that business that we talked about before, the $1,050,000 business with an SBA loan. Now you need to bring 10% to the table. That's about $100,000. Now here's the kicker. You can do this with your own money, or you can do this with investors' money. And we're going to cover, especially on day 3, how we're going to go about raising that money from people that are not you, and how you're going to be able to get these deals done, mixing seller financing, investor money, to where we can get these deals done with little to zero out of pocket. Now, what I want you guys to do right now, and this is something that you are going to put in the chat, so listen up. Take a moment and determine your target cash flow. Okay, so you can input your desired annual income. In the example that I just gave, that was 200K. So for you, it might be 500K, it might be 50K, whatever it may be. Input your desired annual income and use the process I just covered to reverse engineer the number and then come up with your target. So you take whatever number it is, you're going to take 50 to 75% of that number, add it to it, okay? And that is now your target cash flow number because that's what you have to target so that you can end up with that desired cash flow number. So right now in the chat, I want to see what you guys put. Put your target cash flow number. So that's the amount of money you want in your pocket at the end of the year. 50 to 75% of that, add it to it. And now that is your target cash flow number for your acquisition that you're going to be chasing after. So make sure right now, go in the chat, do the math, and I want to see where you guys are at with where that target cash flow number could be. All right, you guys are putting stuff there. Let's see what you got. All right, guys, there we go. Nargis, very good. Okay, that's a good target cash flow number. That means you're looking for something that's right around, the 200K mark, right? That at the end of the day, that's what's coming into your pocket. Okay, good. All right. Let's make sure anyone else, throw your numbers in there. Good, good. Awesome. Good. That's a very good target, Jake. I like that. Looks good. Susan, great. Good. Good. I like this, guys. Guys, you're putting good numbers out here. You're not putting out, like, these are good goals to have. The numbers that you're putting out that I'm seeing come into the chat right now, these are great goals. Okay, you're taking the time. These are put a number in there. Remember, you're going to go through 6 months at least of going through all these steps, the ups and downs of an acquisition. This is a marathon. This is not a sprint. It's hard, right? Don't make sure if you're going to do this that the amount that you're going after in the end is going to be worth the time and the struggle. Okay, so I want to see, like, the numbers that I'm seeing right here are awesome because these are big numbers. These are big goals, and I love you guys putting here. Good, Jose, good job. I love that, man. Tiffany, good. Good. Danush, very good. Carrie, awesome. Awesome. Great job, guys. This looks great. Okay, so keep on putting it in there. I see you guys, Megan, I see that coming in. Keep it going. Throw your numbers in there. I want you guys to go through the math in your head. You guys are doing exactly what I was asking, and I appreciate that. Good. Tiaswi, good job. Good job. Okay, let's move on. I want to make sure we keep going. So here's some key factors to consider. Okay, there's 4 key factors: market stability and the growth potential of this business, your personal interests and skill sets. Some of you guys have skills that others don't have, or some of you guys have personal interests that others don't have. Geographic preferences: where do you want the business to be? Do you want it to be next to where you live? Do you want it to be somewhere where you want to move? Where do you want it to be? And scalability and the potential for improvement, right? You want to buy a business that you can do some tweaks to make it even better. Okay, so choosing the right industry is crucial for long-term success when you're doing acquisitions. So here's the secret number 1 that I talked about at the beginning of the call, the 3-pillar system. This is super important. So everyone, I want to make sure that you guys focus on this part right here, okay? These 3 things need to happen when you're looking at deals. I want you to focus on deals that fit all 3 of these pillars. First, recession resistance, okay? Which means we want that this business, no matter what happens in the macroeconomic environment, anything that happens with GDP, we want this business to have an essential service that is going to be protected regardless if there's a recession or regardless if there is a depression, okay? 2, recurring revenue. We want, once you guys get a customer coming on for your business, we want that customer to come back again and again and again, okay? We don't just want one-time customers, like, let's say you do kitchen remodels and you fix a kitchen up, right? Well, a person is not going to need another kitchen remodel for probably another decade. That's not a recurring client. We want clients that are going to pay us multiple times per year. Right, so we're looking at businesses where we have that recurring client revenue. 3, we want a high barrier to entry. We want a moat. Okay, think about a castle. It has a moat around it. It has a drawbridge that goes over the moat. The purpose of the moat is to stop invaders from being able to scale the wall of the castle. It's the same way we're thinking about businesses. We want a moat around our business, meaning there's something that is very difficult to do what we do. Right? It could be a license requirement. It could be equipment. For instance, like an excavation business where it's hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy one piece of equipment. So there's not anybody can just start a business like that tomorrow. You need a lot of capital. It takes a lot of upfront risk. So we're looking for businesses that have some type of moat that is going to be able to deter others from getting in to compete against you. Okay, so number 1, as I mentioned, recession resistance. You can provide essential products and services, stable demand, regardless of what's going on in the economy. Some of these demands can be financial services, waste management, utilities, And recession-resistant businesses keep cash flowing even in tough economic environments. A lot of the businesses that we are looking at, they are older than 5, 10, 15, sometimes over 30, 40 years. So we can look and see how did they do in the last time we've had a downturn, and we can see how they did. All right. So the more data, the more we're able to see the right types of businesses to go after. All right. Number 2, recurring revenue. We talked about this. This means repeatable client revenue. It's happening. It comes back again and again and again. Some of the examples of this are SaaS companies. So those are software companies, accounting firms, which are one of my favorite, pool cleaning companies, landscaping companies. These are all recurring services. And number 3, as we mentioned, high barrier to entry. We talked about this. Some of the examples for this would be specialized manufacturing, licensed professions. Okay. Accounting firms also fall into this role. Telecommunications, anything that is going to be a high barrier to entry when it comes to just knowledge base or equipment to get started. Now we're going to look at some real life examples of acquisitions that met these exact requirements. Okay. So first, this is Lindsay. She's one of the students in my group. Lindsay just acquired a carpet cleaning business. That was a $1 million purchase. After all said and done, Lindsay's going to be making around $150,000 a year. After paying herself back the amount of money she put in there, she took money out of her 401k to put into the acquisition of this business. And she also didn't have any other partners. She used her own money, did an SBA loan, and now in year 1, she's making $150K back in profit on top of paying that original investment back into the business. Okay, so Lindsay just did this. She did it in 6 months and 15 days to do it. So Lindsay did an awesome job. We have Brian here. Brian's actually a Canadian student of ours. We actually have a couple dozen Canadian students in the group. And Brian was able to structure a 100% seller finance deal for a trailer manufacturing business in Ontario, Canada. So Brian did a great job as well utilizing this. Then we have Melissa, $300K a year in income in her first year, 1 acquisition. Melissa was a former superintendent of a school up in New Jersey. She decided to go after an acquisition. She jumped in feet first. She got a deal done, I think, in about 7 months time frame, and she's now down in Myrtle Beach, commercial pool cleaning business, and she's bringing about $300K in on her first year after the acquisition. Okay, secret number 2, mastering off-market deals, how to source, how to structure, and find hidden gem deals. So the hidden gem strategy is, it's a nice catchy title, but what it really comes down to is, why do we go after off-market deals? 1, they're going to be cheaper, 40% cheaper on average, okay? And they're also going to allow you to use a lot more creative financing structures in order to get these deals done, okay? So it's just not only going to get a better deal in terms of the actual purchase price, but you're going to have a lot more tools available to actually get these deals across the finish line. Outreach prospecting channels, okay? So here's some of the channels that we use for off-market sourcing. We got LinkedIn for direct outreach, as well as PPP loan data, okay, for finding potential sellers. So you guys remember during COVID, a bunch of businesses took out PPP loans. Well, those were federal-backed loans, which means that that's all public domain. You can look and search, and you can see all the businesses, what their applications were, how many employees did they have, what were they doing in revenue. You can just mine that data to find great info about businesses and find ones that would be in your target market to try to purchase. Local business guides, Chamber of Commerce, and Apollo.io we use for targeted prospecting. Go on Apollo.io, you can make a free account. You can start getting leads. You go and you search the industry you're interested in. You can scrape emails, and then you can start doing an off-market email campaign. I'm going to talk about that in a second. So your outreach scripts. So now we're talking about how do we outreach to these businesses that are off-market, right? Because they're not selling yet. These are business owners that they're running their business on a day-to-day. They haven't made the decision yet to sell. And so you're reaching out to them and hoping that they're going to be interested after you reached out to them to talk to you about potentially selling. Okay, so that's the situation you're walking into. So we need to write a script that's going to be very engaging, and a script that is going to catch their attention and show that you have serious intent on buying their business. So right here, okay, so here's a sample script that I do. And I'm going to go through a line up just to show you kind of how I break down my outreach. So message 1, hey, Bob. Let's put Bob as the person we're reaching out to. My name is Ben Kelly. I'm in connection with you about your company. And you can see in the first paragraph that I'm just kind of going into why am I wasting his time, okay? Trying to get right to the point. I'm interested about your company. I want to find out more about your business journey. I want to see where your business is currently at. When are you ready to retire? And I'd love to connect to learn more. Second paragraph, you can talk about yourself. Here's a little bit about me. I've been in commercial real estate. I've worked with numerous businesses. I have a degree in economics, blah, 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 blah. Put a little bit of personal excerpt about you. Next, I'm looking for businesses that are doing X amount in net income, right? Because we don't want to we're going to blast this out to a bunch of businesses. We don't want a lot of businesses that are just not in our target market spending time with us and wasting time, right? So we're going to say right then and there what we're looking for. That way, when we get a response, most likely it's going to be a business that is interested, that fits the mold that we're looking for in our target. And at the bottom, you're going to sign it with your name. I advise putting your LinkedIn link so they can see that you're a real person. and then a calendar link below so that they can book a call to talk to you. Okay, that's typically how we're putting together this script. All right, best practices for outreach, the do's and don'ts. So what you want is your message to be very personalized. Okay, I just kind of went over, talk about, hey, I'm married and I have 3 kids, I have 2 dogs. Talk about who you are and what you're doing. Be clear about your intentions. I'm looking for X, Y, and Z. Highlight mutual benefits. Okay, I have a background in this, and I think that would be great for your business and to run your business because I can do X, Y, and Z for your business. And then follow up. Continually follow up. If you get someone to respond back to you and they say, hey, I'm interested, but not right now, I'm kind of busy, can we talk next month? It is on you to follow up. Do not rely on them. Do not rely on brokers. Do not rely on anybody but yourself when it comes to follow up. Don't use generic templates, right? Use the template that I just gave and make it your own. Put your own signature on it. Put your own background information and make it talk about you. Don't be pushy or super aggressive, okay? Don't misrepresent your background. Don't lie, all right? You tell the truth. And don't neglect to follow up. So the key elements: be concise, be personal, show value, give a specific call to action, meaning book a call, and keep it brief. Okay, that is what you're there for. Be brilliant, be brief, be brilliant, be gone. Right, that is what we're going after. Number 3, how to build your broker network and 10x your deal flow. Okay, business acquisition is a numbers game. Okay, it's a numbers game. The more deals that you have in your pipeline, the more likely you'll get a deal done. Right, this is how it works. So the more that you can build up that deal pipeline, the more likely that you're going to get that deal done sooner, and you're going to have your pick of the best deals. So first thing you need to do consistently is network. Go on sites like BizBuySell. Go on sites like with Kuma. There's a site that I'm actually coming out in the next few months, and you guys, since you already signed up for the webinar, you'll get a shout out when it comes out. It's going to be called SMB Market. It's coming soon, and we're going to try to make it the best way for you guys to search for businesses. But whatever site you're using, okay, you're going to go on there. You're going to find the brokers that are listing deals that are the deals that you like. They have your target cash flow, right? They're in the area you're looking for. Maybe they're in an industry that you're interested in. And you're going to be making a Google sheet and writing down all the broker's name, the deal, details, and reaching out to them on a consistent basis. You're going to build up this network, this Rolodex of all of these listing agents, all the ones that you see listing deals that you like. Now, that deal might not be the deal for you. It's okay. Still put their name down, still reach out to them, still build a relationship, because once they see you're serious and they know that you're looking for something that's similar to what they're posting, they're going to send you those next deals that come to them before they post it on those sites. You want them to actually do their job as a broker, to send you those listings before they actually send them to anybody else or put them on BizBuySell or do anything else like that, okay? This is going to be able to build your pipeline, guys. It takes time, but the goal is to get between 15 and 20 of these brokers so that they are sending you daily deals that are coming into their pipeline, okay? We want people working on our behalf, right? So make sure you're taking the initiative, you're writing down these details, start a Google sheet, make a couple columns. You're going to have a link to the business deal, the broker, their contact information, the notes on the last time you talked with them, because I promise you, as you get into this, you're going to be talking to so many different people. You're going to have so many different people that your deals that you're looking at, you're going to get them all mixed together. So make sure you start out and you are organized. As we mentioned before, I like to say 15 to 25 brokers, right? It has 10 to 20 here, but 15 to 25 brokers. You're making this Rolodex. You're making sure that you are building this up. The more brokers you have in your network that are sending your deals, the more deals you're going to get, right? The bigger your pipeline is going to get, the more likely you're going to be able to find one you love and be able to take it down, right? It is just a numbers game. So the goal is, after doing all this work, and this takes a couple months of work, of calling and talking with brokers, but after a couple months, the goal is to wake up in the morning, have your coffee, let your kids go off to school, open your email, and have deals just sitting in your inbox. That's what we're looking for. That's what we're doing here. So because you're going to be getting so many deals coming to your pipeline, you can pick the best deals. You're not going to be pressured because there's no deals out there and you just feel like you have to take the only one that's available to you, right? You can negotiate from a position of strength. And that is exactly how people are able to build up these cash flowing portfolios, is because they figured out how to find the deals in the first place. This topic tonight, guys, sourcing deals, finding deals, this is the hardest thing. Finding good deals is the hardest part of business acquisition. The funding, the analyzing, way easier than finding great deals. Every investor out there wants to find a great deal. They can't, which is why they need someone like you, okay? So focusing on this part of the process, this is where your foundation is laid. Okay. The next part of this is crafting your search narrative. Okay, your search narrative is your personal brand. You're going to be talking to a bunch of lenders, investors, sellers, brokers, so many different people in this process. And you need to understand what your search narrative is. What is your story? Why are you doing this? Why is this something that you should be doing? And it is something that people should take a bet on you. The lender taking a bet on you, the investor taking a bet on you, the seller taking a bet on you that you're the right person to sell a business to. So your why is super important, okay? So right now, I want you guys to take a couple minutes, 1 to 2 minutes. I want you guys to write a why statement. Why are you interested in acquisitions? Why do you think this is something that you should do? Why is this something that you should take 6 months or plus to focus on? What is the main reason that's motivating? Okay, take 1 to 2 minutes, get this going, and we'll jump right back in. All right. Okay, take another 15, 20 seconds, guys, and make sure that you are putting the finishing touches on your why statement. I like that, Vicky. That's awesome. That's good. Very good. Good. Ajis, I like it as well. Good one. Very good. Very good. All right, guys, finish up. And we're going to continue on because I got a lot to hit. I want to make sure that we are good to go on doing this. Okay, sounds good. If you haven't finished it yet, no problem, guys. That's going to be homework tonight. Remember, we're here for 3 nights together. So first night, make sure you take all this down, work on it, so by tomorrow night, you're going to be able to have that. I see some of you guys putting over here that the chat is not working, okay? So we're actually going to figure out why that's not happening. And so don't make it take too much of your attention. I'm going to keep on going. I'm going to have my team jump on in. They're going to look at it and see why that's not working. And they're going to get it back up and running if they can. So let's move on and hit the next part. So identifying transferable skills, okay? So this is now looking into yourself. We're looking into the things that you have done that are going to be a great skill to utilize in your acquisition search, okay? So professional experiences that you've had, personal projects, side hustles, soft skills like leadership, problem solving, connecting skills like business ownership, okay? Highlight relevant achievements, show industry understanding, and address concerns proactively. Remember, you have more relevant experience than you realize. Frame that experience, whatever it is. You were working in marketing, you were working in sales, you're working in operations. Guess what? Marketing, sales, and operations, those are the 3 main parts of every business. All of you out there have experience in one of those 3 areas. Figure it out, write it down, understand kind of the experience you've had, and be able to use that in crafting your search narrative, and crafting the narrative of why you are going to be the good person to go out and get funding and to buy this business. Remember, you need to believe it. It needs to be true. It needs to be something where you're confident in because you're going to be using this pitch to everybody you meet, and it has to be convincing. The first person you need to convince is yourself. Then after that, I promise you, the second you pitch it to somebody else and you tell them exactly why you're doing what you're doing, they're going to say, that's great. How can I help you? And that's exactly what we're looking for. All right, so here are some examples of how pitching your narrative to a seller can result in a successful acquisition. Okay, so right here's Adam, okay? Again, a lot of these videos, these testimonials, they're on YouTube, so you guys can go check them out. They're great conversations with people that have worked in my group in Acquisition Ace, and they can talk about exactly how they got these deals done, okay? So this is Adam. Adam worked for a marketing company. He was mid-level marketing guy. And Adam joined the group. He learned how to go about utilizing kind of his experience, and he was able to bring down a nearly $4 million deal with 0 money of his own pocket, with no investors. Okay, so he didn't raise money. He didn't use any of his own money. He was able to structure a seller note in a way where the bank considered the seller note to be the buyer's injection of capital. And we can talk about that later on. If you have a question about it, ask it at the end. But he was able to structure it in a way that we taught him to where the bank said, no problem, Adam, we feel great about this deal. The seller note will be sufficient for your buyer injection of capital. And year 1, he's going to be doing over $1 million in cash flow. And he put $0 into the deal. All right, here's Chris. And Chris is doing about $250,000 a year now in passive cash flow after he acquired a business. And this, again, is in California. And we have this for Avi. Okay, and again, these are videos that you guys can check out on my YouTube channel. But Avi got a SaaS company that was actually a Bible-based SaaS company that would send out daily devotionals. And he was able to buy this business, structured it, seller financing, and was able to, I think in year 1, he's going to be doing about $125,000 in cash flow. All right, and this is Zach, right? So Zach is the guy who's actually going to be on tomorrow. So for all of you who are joining tonight, tomorrow is going to be day 2. Day 2, we're going to go through analyzing deals, and Zach's actually going to be on to talk about his accounting firm. He's not an accountant. How he bought a $2 million accounting firm. He's going to be making over $1 million in his first year, and he's going to be there to talk about his story. So make sure you guys are showing up tomorrow. Okay, key points from today. We talked about 3 pillars of a perfect acquisition target. We talked about how to reverse engineer your ideal business based on cash flow. We talked about strategies for finding off-market deals. We talked about creating your outreach scripts, building a powerful network of brokers and sellers, and creating a compelling search narrative. Okay, these are fundamental things. Remember, today is the foundational base for going out there and acquiring your first business. If you don't get today correct, meaning you don't know how to go out there, you don't know how to search for the right type of business for you, you don't know how to go out and talk to off-market sellers, you don't know how to build a deal pipeline. If you don't do those things, then every other thing is not going to matter. Okay, it's all about sourcing good deals. So these are the foundations to do that. So make sure we're taking this and you guys are putting the effort into doing this. So right now, here's the homework. I don't mean it sound like you're a teacher or professor. Again, what you put in, you're gonna get out. Okay, so we talked through this right now, almost an hour going through these topics. What I want you guys to do before tomorrow, define your annual income, the ideal money that you want to make, and reverse engineer your target business number. Okay, some of you guys already put that into the chat. Some of you guys probably didn't get that done. So come up with that number. Now you want to identify 3 industries, right? We talked about recession resistance, recurring revenue, and has a barrier to entry. Those 3 things. Come up with 3 industries that fit those 3 different pillars. Okay. Then we're going to craft a personalized outreach script. Okay, so that kind of that template I showed you, right? You talk about why you're reaching out, talk about who you are, talk about exactly what you're looking for, and how they can contact you. Those 4 steps. Okay. Write a little script that you would send via email to a business that is potentially looking to sell. And I want you guys to write your why statement. Why are you doing this? That is super, like, I know it sounds almost like woo-woo and just kind of this psychological babble, but it's really important because this is, like I said, this is a marathon. If you don't understand why you're doing this and have a clear target for why and a clear reason for why, you're not going to do it. It's that simple, okay? Make sure you understand why you're doing it. Make sure why you're taking your time away from your family or your job to do this and why it's important to you and why this is something that you want to invest your time and energy into, okay? Put your why statement there. Now, be sure to complete these tasks because day 2, we are going to be jumping in, and I want that done because that is going to help you for day 2 to get into what we're going to be talking about in terms of how to go about doing diligence and analyzing deals, okay? So tomorrow, we're going to do the 2-minute technique to evaluate any business. We're then going to go through the golden ratio for deal analysis and identify any red flags that you can see right off the bat when you're looking at potential deals. We're going to structure how to structure your offer for maximum leverage. We're going to talk about the art of negotiation, how to get the best possible terms. So get ready because we're going to go into the deals. We're going to show you guys how to be experts in deal analysis. Okay, and in day 3, we got 4 pillars of funding for business acquisition, how to fund your dream business with little to zero down, step-by-step estimating loan process, demystified. Okay. Creating financing, creative financing techniques and strategies for raising capital from investors. Even as a first-time buyer with no experience, how do you go out there and how do you raise money from investors? Okay, so that's going to be on day 3. Okay, today we did step 1, tomorrow step 2, and Thursday will be step 3. Okay, you guys have been with me this entire time. I appreciate you. It's almost been an hour. I know I've been going on and on about this. So now we're going to dive into the live Q&A. Free feel to ask anything about business acquisition, how to start, the whole gamut. Make sure to go over to the Q&A tab in the chat, throw in your questions, and we'll make sure we get to them. So we are going to jump over there, okay? And we'll make sure that you guys complete your homework, and I'll see you tomorrow. So let me jump into here. Okay, so hopefully we have the chat being fixed, and make sure that you guys can be able to send me your questions. All right, so let's see here. Okay, host, okay. Let me make sure that this is enabled. Okay, chats. Okay. All right, guys, let me know if the chat is working. Okay, because I'm trying to make sure that you guys can put your questions so that I can answer them. All right. So let me know if you guys can put in the chat if it's working or not. Okay, let's see. All right. Okay, so chat isn't working from Kevin. Okay, all right, so we're going to figure this out, guys. All right, let's see. Still not working. Okay, so the private messaging is working, guys. Okay, so for some reason, the main chat and the main, okay, so I see the questions coming in for the Q&A. So just do it as a private chat or private Q&A message, and it's going to show up, right? I see the private messages. Obviously, you guys can't see them because it's private, but I see them, okay? So I see them coming in. Just if you want to send me a question, send it private, Q&A, and that's going to work. So I'm going to start hitting these questions I see popping up here, and I promise you by tomorrow we're going to figure out why it's not coming up in the main chat, all right? Okay, so just make sure you put it in private. I do see them, and send a Q&A. So first question. Question from Jade. Curious about any differences in why this wouldn't work in Canada. SBA type loans exist as well with personal guarantee and bizbuysell.com lists Canadian businesses, but not sure if any other considerations to be aware of. Okay. So the big question right here is about SBA in Canada. So Canada does not have SBA because the Small Business Administration is a U.S. agency. Now Canada has, I think, big 4, big 5 banks. They do have business acquisition loans. I'm not an expert on them because I've never done a loan with them. But we do have students who are in Canada who are utilizing those loan processes to acquire businesses. Now, Brian, the guy who I showed you before on the presentation, Brian Coates, he did a seller finance deal. So he was able to do his deal without bank financing. He just made a direct deal with the seller, and he was able to make some terms with the seller to get his deal done. So if you're in Canada, you're not going to have access to the SBA. The only way you can is by partnering with a U.S. partner, right? So you decide to partner with somebody who's a U.S. citizen. They would be the person to get the SBA loan, and you guys can partner together. Next, Jake. How to avoid SBA loans from cross-collateralizing your other assets. I own several rental properties. So Jake, when it comes down to it, SBA loan is going to have you personally guaranteed, which means that your other assets, as you mentioned, will be seen as collateral. Now, the way to make it to where your other assets are not used as collateral, there's a couple different methods. One is go and get a HELOC out on those assets, those rental properties. The HELOC, don't use it though. So get the HELOC, get the line open, don't use it so you don't have to make any payments. But just by having it there, it's going to stop them from being able to put a lien on that property. Also, what you can do, this is a little bit more advanced, right? You can transfer the name of those rental properties, if you're married, into your wife's name, out of your name, so that those properties would be protected. Now remember, whatever you're taking off the table for SBA to where they can't use it as collateral, they're going to reduce the amount that they can approve you for. So instead of being approved for $4 million to buy a business, you might be only approved for $1 million because you took away all those rental properties, okay? So figure out what is really important for you to protect, and then open yourself up on other things so that you can get the most you can qualify for to get the deal that you need. Morris, for SBA loans, I've spoken to a few banks and they all require collateral. That is correct. They're going to require some type of collateral. Remember, the SBA is able to give 90+% leverage because the government's backing the loan, right? But they also are going to be getting collateral. That protects their downside. If the business fails, in the very unlikely event that it does, they need to make some money back, and they do that through your collateral. So unless the business itself has real estate involved, it has a bunch of equipment involved, that's enough to offset that collateral on the price, they are going to take that collateral from you, okay? So think through the things that you want to protect and think through the things that you're okay risking as you're going to do this acquisition. All right, Siri, in which way does this differ from the ETA search fund? Great question. So a search fund is a little bit different because, and this is something that's a little bit more MBA focused. A search fund is you have an MBA grad who comes out, wants to buy a business, they got a fancy degree, and they go out and they raise money. So they do that to begin with. They go raise a few $1 million. And that few $1 million is going to fund the acquisition, plus it's going to pay them a salary as they're going out there and searching for a deal. And they're going to search for a deal for typically, on average, 18 to 24 months, right? Way longer than the type of deals that we're doing, right? They go out there, and only about 40% of those search funds are successful in finding a deal. So they raise the money, they go out, they have a bunch of shareholders, and they try to find a deal that makes everyone happy. And they buy it, and they are going to be typically a minority owner, and the investors are going to be the majority owner. That is typically what a search fund is. What we're doing differently here is you're going to be the majority owner, right? You might take on some investors, but they're going to be more of an angel investor. They might take 10, 15, 20% of a deal, and you're going to go out there, acquire a business, and you are the owner of that business. You don't really answer to anyone else, right? And so it's just a different type of model that we're doing. Okay, Shruti, would you suggest buying small businesses over franchises? What are the pros and cons for each, and why would you suggest one over the other? Yes. Now, I'm not against franchises. Okay, I'm against. There's a lot of franchises out there that are good. Okay, so I want to start off by saying that there's a lot of franchises out there that are good, but there's a big but here. They're expensive. They have a higher multiple usually associated with them. You're also going to be paying royalty fees to the franchisor. There's so many good businesses out there that are not franchises that are a lot less expensive. You're going to be making much more money on your investment than a franchise. Okay, so while there's great franchises, and if you see one that you like, you 100% can go and acquire it. I see a lot of better deals typically than franchise deals, which is why I focus mostly on non-franchise types of businesses. Hannah, do you recommend looking for your first business in your state and city? Yes, I would start my search around where I live. Okay, so I live in Southwest Florida. So I would start around Southwest Florida. Then if I don't find anything, I would continually expand my net, right? Then I would go to Southeast Florida. Now I'm going to Northwest Florida, Northeast Florida, and then I would start looking in Georgia, the Carolinas, and kind of stick like that. Start where you are because it is easiest to acquire business close by. It's going to be easiest from a lender perspective. It's going to be easiest from an investor perspective. And so start where you are. If you can't find anything, then you can move on and start to increase the net. Okay. Morris works on M&O. Good. Glad you guys figured it out. Sam, what is the formula for calculating target business amount based on cash flow? What is the formula for calculating target? Okay. So Sam, what we have to start out with is how much cash do you want in your pocket by the end of the year? 12 months. The number, like in the example, we said 200K. Now times 200K by 50%. That would be 100,000, right? 50% of 200K is 100,000. Take that 100,000, add it to the 200,000. That equals 300,000. 300,000 is what you're targeting because after you take out debt to buy it, you're going to be left with about 200,000. Okay, so it's just a way for us to understand how much do you need, add the 50 to 75% on top of it, find a business that meets that equation, and now after all said and done, you'll be back to 200K. Okay, so it's just a way to figure out what type of size of deal you need to look for. Right, Hannah, are there different rates and terms offered for an SBA loan depending on the bank? As an example, local bank versus Chase. Yes. So typically, local banks are going to have better rates. Typically, right? There's not going to be a huge difference. Okay. So I would say the best rates I'm seeing right now are 8.5% on a 10-year term, and the highest rates I'm seeing are around 10.5 to 11. Right. So there's a good 2.5% spread. Now, when you're looking at $1 million, $2 million, $3 million loan, that can be a lot. Right? That's a big difference. Okay. So it is meaningful, but typically you're looking around an average of like 9 to 10% on a 10-year term. Local banks can give out better rates because they are not looking to, they're going to be selling, they're not selling these loans a lot of times on the secondary market. So they're keeping the loans on their own books so they can give a better rate. But a lot of other businesses are going to be selling these loans on the secondary market. And so that is why they're going to be a little bit more expensive. Okay, Ace, do you have examples of businesses acquisitions in Canada? Yes, so we just talked about earlier about Brian Coates, Canadian. He bought a trailer manufacturing business for 125K. Did it all solar financing, put very little money down, and he's able to take that and build it up into a successful trailer manufacturing business. They did that over the course of about 6 months. And so we have another Canadian couple that is in our group, and they are closing, I think, on a tree trimming business up near Quebec. And so they're closing on that business, right? And so there's a couple different examples. There's no SBA loans, so they're doing a mixture of. The couple that I mentioned is doing a mixture of bank financing, Canadian bank financing, and seller finance. All right, Tehaswi, question as we end day one. For the business you acquire, how much of a role do you play in setting strategy, pricing, identifying growth opportunities, since these are very key decisions, wonder how you can make passive income? Correct. So how much of a role do I play? Most of the time, like especially now, like when I first started, I was just trying to learn how to get started and was looking for just any opportunity. Now that I've done this myself half a dozen times, and I've done it hundreds of times with my students, we are looking for things day one that are structured so that you can go and not be in the day-to-day, okay? So when you're asking about setting strategy, pricing, identifying growth opportunities, all those things, we are buying businesses where there is a GM who is doing the majority of what you're saying here in terms of the strategy, pricing. Now, identifying growth opportunities is very much an owner role. So you're still going to be spending some time on this business on a weekly basis. You're going to be identifying the different areas in which you can make it better. A lot of these businesses, and we're going to talk about this, I think, tomorrow, about looking for the right type of businesses. Some businesses that are fax machines, right? You walk in, they have a fax machine, and you're like, there's no way the business in 2024 has a fax machine. But that's a great sign because they've been able to be around for decades. They've been profitable for decades, and they still haven't modernized at all. And so you can do little tweaks to make that business more efficient and more cash flowing positive, right? So we were looking, as an owner, you're looking at ways when you acquire this business and how you can do tweaks to make it better. And so the growth opportunities typically relies on you. And it's something where most of these businesses, you're not coming up with these crazy strategies that no one's ever done before. They're very simple, like make a website, use a CRM to categorize your customers, do some outreach, start marketing. So these are very simple things that most of you guys on this call already innately know how to get started. Hannah, what are the scenarios where you see an SBA loan finance 95% of the loan? Great question. Typically, they're financing 95% of the loan when it's a strong cash flowing business. So we're talking about a DSCR, which stands for debt service coverage ratio. So a DSCR, that's well over 2, okay? Which means you have 2 times the amount of cash flow than you do debt service, right? That's what that means. So they're looking for a good DSCR, and they're looking for a strong seller note. So the other part of this is they might fund 95%, but that other 5% is going to have a very strong seller note attached to it. And so they have to feel really good about the business, they have to feel very good about you as a candidate, and they have to feel very good that the seller note that you structured is going to keep the seller engaged to help you maintain this business and grow this business. Okay. All right. Which are your top 3 ideal businesses? Right now, I'm really focusing on accounting firms. I'm doing a roll-up. That's kind of my next focus. I already have one, and I'm going to continue to go down that route. The goal is to acquire another 10 in the next 2 years. So that is kind of what I'm focusing on. The second one, I love ATM routes. They're extremely passive, and they got great cash flow, but they're very hard to get a deal done with financing. So me and my partners who did that deal were the first ones to have an SBA lender actually fund an ATM route deal. And so we've done it, which means it can be done again, but it was very hard. I had to find one that was very clean on its books, and it was just a perfect business all the way around. It's very hard to find an ATM route that fit all of the checked all the boxes that the bank was looking for. But we did it. So I would say accounting firms, ATM routes, and then I would say anything that has to do with like a professional service. So any kind of engineering firm, anything that's going to have kind of a white collar service because the margins are high. And if it's doing something that's an essential service, then it's something that really has a lot of room to grow. And a lot of baby boomers have those types of businesses, and they've just been cash cows for years. So anything that has to do with engineering, I like. And I'm not an engineer, right? But I see that those businesses are great cash flowing businesses. They have a great moat, they have great recurring customers, and they have great profitability. Okay, let's see. Alex, will this be recorded? Yes, it's being recorded. We decide at the end of all 3 days, we'll consider throwing this out for everyone who attended all 3 days to get the recording. Okay, Danielka, okay, can you find success doing this with a full-time job? Yes. If I go back to that presentation and showed you all of those successful students that I was talking with, then I showed that kind of a screenshot of, all of them were full-time W-2. None of them did not have a job while doing this. So to answer your question, yes. Nicole, let's see. Online trading company, 1.26 million SDE, trailing 12 months, 4.8 million purchase price. Does this seem like a good valuation for you? No collateral because online business, so struggling getting SBA loan thoughts. Yes, you're going to struggle with an SBA loan because of exactly what you mentioned. Is the price at 1.26 million SDE? Yeah. You're talking at that point just under like 3.5 multiple, right? So, but the real question that comes on that deal, Nicole, to whether or not that's worth 4.8 is what is the management like? Once they sell, are you stepping in to replace the owners? Do they have a GM who's running the day-to-day? Because if they don't, then now I'm not paying 3.5, right? I'm going to pay much closer to a 3 multiple because I'm going to have to go out and hire somebody and take away probably a couple $100,000 from hiring people so that I'm not the one running the day-to-day. And it's also going to add risk to me because I don't know if I'm going to find the right person to do that. So it all comes down to the management. Find out about the management. Is the owner willing to stay on? Is the owner willing to keep some equity and continue to run it just like he has been running it? Okay, those are the types of strategies I like to where it takes the risk away from me acquiring that deal. Okay, let's see. David, when building your network of brokers, do you recommend starting local or finding business regardless of geography? I recommend brokers all over the place because brokers, it's very much a national thing. A lot of these brokers work for brokerages that are franchises that are national. So I would just talk to every broker that you know, tell them what you're looking for, and be able to build your network up that way. Okay, how is this different from ETA? We already answered that question. What is your favorite industry to invest in from Kyle? At this point, accounting firms. Question from Tammy. What's after the 3-day trade? Very sadly, I go back to my normal life until we do the next challenge. So at the end of the 3-day challenge, there's going to be an opportunity if you guys want to continue to learn more and everything else, but it's a 3-day challenge. We're talking about sourcing, due diligence, and funding. And the goal is to get as many people as possible hyped up and excited about thinking that this could be a way in which they can grow generational wealth for them and their families. That's the goal. Hunter, what factors lead to you saying that accounting businesses are better than other options? Oh, great question, Hunter. I'm glad you asked. So the reason why I'm super bullish on accounting firms is one, super recession resistance, right? The 2 things in life that you can count on are death and taxes, right? Taxes aren't going anywhere, which means accounting firms are going to be around to help people with taxes. So that's one, super recession resistant. 2, very high margins. A typical accounting firm has over 40% profit margins. Number 3, to buy an accounting firm is cheaper than other types of businesses. Okay, this is how it works. So typically, as we went through in the slides earlier, a typical business, that small business, it's going to sell between 2 and 4x the cash flow. Well, an accounting firm is not that, okay? An accounting firm is something where you are buying it based off the previous year's overall revenue. So you can buy it 1x the previous year's revenue. So $1 million accounting firm is doing about $1 million of revenue, but doing around $400,000 of cash flow. So if that was another type of small business, you would be paying at least 1.2 million, but probably more closer to 1.5 million. All right. But an accounting firm, you're going to buy it for $1 million. So you're getting more bang for your buck. That's the biggest thing. Okay. Okay, so we got through that. We got a few more guys to hit here. I know there's a bunch of questions. I probably will not be able to get to all these, but we're going to hit as many as we can. Cody, do you need a proof of funds for conducting due diligence? So you don't need the proof of funds to conduct due diligence, but you need a proof of funds in order to get basically. Okay, I'll say this: not for every deal do you need proof of funds. You're going to have some brokers that are going to ask for it though on a deal before they give you any information. They're going to say, "Hey, show me proof of funds." And so you would show the proof of funds. You would then sign an NDA and you get the information. If you like the information that they give you, you can make an offer, an LOI on the business. You get it on a contract, and now you start the due diligence. Okay, so that's the process. Okay, what are some examples of businesses you wouldn't buy, says Perler. Okay, I'll give you two. One that I would not buy is anything to do with construction. Not a fan. The one mistake I've made in acquisitions was getting involved in a construction company. I will not do it again. So construction. Two, anything that is tied to a fad, right? So a typical, like a perfect example would be like crumble cookies. I'm sure you guys know that brand. They're everywhere now. Delicious cookies, but they're like $6 for a cookie, okay? Now, you guys can do your own test on that model. Are $6 cookies recession resistant? No. Do they have recurring revenue? Yeah, kind of, yeah, right? So if you like the cookie, a lot of the time those customers will come back and back. Is there a barrier to entry for the $6 cookies? Not really, right? Anyone can make cookies. It's not a high cost product to make. So it doesn't even hit 2 out of the 3 pillars that we're looking for. Plus, it very much is a fad. Do I think 10 years from now, crumble cookie is going to be just as strong as it is now? I don't. I think it's going to go the way of frozen yogurt. And there'll be a new fad that happens in the next couple of years. Okay, so stay away from construction, stay away from fads. Okay, how do you elegantly state that you are looking for hands-off businesses? You don't want to state that, Nicole, okay, because that definitely is going to give off the wrong impression. So what you're going to say is you're just asking about the management. You're the one who's going to make the decision on whether or not this thing can be hands-off. So don't ask them that. Ask them about the management. How many hours a week is the owner working? What tasks are the owners doing on a weekly basis? Is there a GM in the business that can take over all the things that the owner is doing? Is there an employee who can step up into the role of the GM and replace what the owner is doing? You'll get the answers to those questions, and then you can make the determination if this can be hands-off or not. Okay, so that's how you go about doing it. Allison, can you share the formula for reverse engineering? Formula is whatever you want to cash flow at the end of the year, times that by 50%, add that to that number, and that is what the cash flow target is for you. John, 20K liquid, big cash required to have. Yes. 20K liquid's a good start because, again, the process is going to cost. Diligence costs when you have a professional due diligence, and also a bank's going to want to see that you have liquid funds because they're not going to give you a pre-qual if you have nothing, right? They want to see that you are financially stable, and they're looking for at least that. Steve, I am naive, so forgive me. No worries, Steve, I will forgive you. Can you please walk through reverse engineering one more time? No worries. Here we go. How much money do you want at the end of the year in your pocket? I'm going to say 200K. Okay. Times that by 50%. 200K times 50% is 100,000. Take the 100,000, add it to the 200K. That equals 300,000. That's your target cash flow number for the business that you're looking for. Is one that's advertising that it does 300,000 in cash flow. Okay. Brittany, do you have a holding company that buys each business, or is each business its own entity? So each business is its own entity, but that entity is owned by the holding company. Okay. I'll say that one more time. Each business acquisition I do is its own LLC. And that LLC, the ownership of that LLC is my holding company. Okay. Kevin, how do you find a business that doesn't become a 70-hour time sink? If the goal is to buy and let the cash flow come in, is there something I should look for before acquisition so that is a low touch? Yes, you're looking for the management. We're asking questions regarding, is the seller willing to stay on and manage the business? If yes, great. That's option 1. Option 2, is there a GM currently running the business? If there is, great. Option 3, is there someone in the business that can step up into the role of a GM to run the business? If that's not happening, option 4 is going to recruit a GM. Now, option 4 I don't like. It adds a lot of risk. Therefore, I don't look at businesses that don't already have a built-in management system for the business. Ray, how do you manage so many businesses? Because I don't. I do not. I either have an operating partner who's managing it or I have a GM who's managing it. I do not manage any of the day-to-day of any of the businesses I do. Gonzalo, do you run them or do you have operators? I have operators. Leo, what are the VIPs for? Will we have access to this live video if we are part of the VIPs? You guys are going to be having access on day 3 afterward, a special session with me where you guys can ask me much more personal questions on a Zoom call. We'll talk more about that as we go forward, but don't worry, we're going to make sure you guys have a lot more access being VIPs. Francisco, are SBA loans available for LLCs? So yes and no. You're always going to have a personal guarantee on the SBA loan. But yes, the LLC is what the name is it's what the SBA loan is being in the name of, right? So I'm taking a loan in the name of ABC LLC, but Ben Kelly is personally guaranteeing that loan. Okay. Ali, okay, guys, we're coming up, and I'm going to do 3 more of these questions, okay? And then we will end the night because I think we got another 50 questions here, and I want to be mindful of everyone's time. You guys have stuck with me. We've had over 500 people this entire time. It's been awesome, and I want to make sure you guys get a good night's sleep because tomorrow we're going to be right back here for another hour and a half doing the second part of this series. So I want to make sure you guys are going to stick with me. And remember, tomorrow we're going to discover why due diligence is so important. So important. The biggest mistake I ever made in acquisitions was not doing diligence on one of the deals, okay? So due diligence is super important. We'll go through that tomorrow in depth. We're going to go over how to analyze these deals in depth so you know the difference between a good and a bad deal. And remember, Zach Jensen, who was one of my students who acquired a $2.1 million accounting firm, who's not an accountant, who's going to cash flow over $1 million in his first year. He's going to be live on the call. He's going to go through his story. You guys are going to be able to see that, ask questions, the whole 9 yards. So tomorrow is super important for you guys to show up. So I hope to see all of you guys jumping on tomorrow. So let's do 3 more questions, and we will then be able to call it the night. Okay. What are the biggest pitfalls? This is from Alan. What are the biggest pitfalls in the search process that deters folks from moving forward if it's not a lack of supply? Biggest pitfalls, Ali, is a mindset. The people that do not get this process done and actually acquire a business are people that do not get the right mindset from the beginning, meaning they think that this is going to be easy. They think that they're going to get it done in a couple months. They think that this is a get-rich-quick type thing, and it's not. This takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of focus. It takes determination. It takes you not giving up because there is going to be obstacles. Believe me, every deal is going to have ups and downs. And if you're the type of person when there's the first down and you just want to call it quits, this is not the thing for you. This is not for someone who is squeamish. And when it comes to things happening where you have to be creative, you have to put your foot down and be able to really grind your teeth to get through some of these deals to get them done. Okay, it's fun. Once you get to know it and understand it, it's a fun process because every deal is different. You're going to go against all these different things to get a deal across the finish line. But the number one thing is people just not having the right mindset when they get into it. Kyle, you mentioned that we can find investors to find their deals. How do we work with you to become that investor? So one of the things we'll talk about on the third night is the investor portion. A lot of our students are also investors that are investing in other students' deals. So if you're interested in that, make sure you stick around for the third night, and there's going to be information where you can take that and move forward to learn more about that in a more formal process. All right, last question. Do you recommend setting up an LLC to buy a business? Yes, that was an easy question, so I'll do one more. Okay, Mike, last question. What is the essential element or mindset that you had when you made your first deal that gave you the confidence you can actually run a business and be people's boss who don't know you, don't know what to think, and still feel you can do this? Great. I think that's a great question to end the night on. So the element I just talked about, having that grit and determination, is kind of the main thing that people need to have in order to be successful in this. But when it comes to actually running the business, it's really about just not having ego. It really is about being someone who does not have an ego. You're going to walk into a business that you really don't have an idea about how it's being run. Okay. And if you do it correctly, it's going to have a team that's already running the day-to-day. The first 90 days after you've acquired that business, you're going to focus on learning as much as you possibly can. You're not making any big changes. You're not firing people. You're not really doing anything besides learning about people that work for you, how they do what they do, why this is a great business. And after 90 days, then you can get to the point of deciding to make some small tweaks here and there. So number one is don't have an ego, right? Learn from everyone around you. Take the time to get to know your people. Take the time to get to know what their goals are, what they want to do, how you can support them in that. And if you can do that, you're going to gain their trust. If you gain their trust, you're going to be able to grow the business. Okay, guys, this has been a fun hour and a half. That was the last question of the night. Remember, tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern time, right here, same time. We're going to be going over day 2, diligence, why it's so important, how to analyze a good deal versus a bad deal. We're going to have Zach Jensen on, who's going to talk through his deal. You guys will be able to see that live, ask questions. So I appreciate you guys taking your time out of your busy schedules and joining me. I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow night. Have an awesome night. God bless. And I will talk to you all soon. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Day 2 of the Buy a Business challenge that we're doing. I appreciate you guys showing back up. Honestly, I didn't know if any of you guys would actually come back for the second night. So I'm actually pretty impressed right now that we have over 200 people that are joining us. We're going to wait, just like we did yesterday, everybody. We're going to wait a few minutes. We're going to see everyone that can come into the chat and make sure everyone's here before I launch into our second night, day 2, where we're going to be talking about diligence. So in the meantime, I see some of you guys already doing this. In the meantime, in the chat, hopefully the chat doesn't break like you did yesterday. We try to figure it out, but I guess it was just too many of you guys, right? Which is a good problem to have. So go in the chat, where you're from. I want to see who we have, who's from the furthest possible place. Owen in Brisbane, Australia. I think you're going to win tonight, Owen. Let's see. We got Tiffany, LA. Let's see. We got this is the first day. Can we get a recap? Don't worry, Hannah. We will get a recap of day one as we go. We got Gadisa from Saskatchewan. Awesome. Welcome. We got John from Melbourne. All right. Another Australian going on. Renee from London. Cassandra from Oklahoma. All right, guys. Let's see. Slovakia. Love it. That's awesome. Welcome, Marek. Raj from India. I think Australia has you beat. We got Tom O from South Australia. Okay, so we got a bunch of Aussies in the house tonight. That's awesome. Pat from Antarctica. Well, Pat, I think you're going to win tonight. You're the lone person in Antarctica with all the penguins that are out there. James, no Martians today. Yeah, we had a guy from Mars yesterday. I forget his name. He would have been the winner yesterday. Sunny from the Fiji Islands. Man, okay, yeah, I'm now going to have to pull out a map to see if you're further than Australia. I don't think you are. I think Australia is still further. Nick from Phoenix. Welcome, Nick. Let's see. We got Mary from Nigeria. Welcome, Mary. Glad to have you here. We got Travis, South African in the UK. All right, man. Welcome. We got Alfred from London on. Cool. Very cool, guys. Let's see. Who else we got here? Alex from Anchorage. Welcome, Alex. We got Noor from Saratoga Springs, Utah. Welcome. Sam from India. All right. We got a couple of people from India on here. Pat is joining likely because he's bored and lonely in Antarctica. I think you're correct. I think you're absolutely correct. I would be bored and lonely if I was in Antarctica for sure. Who else we got, guys? Come on. Joey, let's get this show on the road. I know, Joey. I'm revving to go. I'm just waiting a couple more minutes. We have the number climbing still of people in the group. Going down the second day, I would be blown away if we had over 500 people. First day, we were cooking. I know that it's hard for every one of you guys to take out 3 hours over the course of 3 days to do this. So believe me when I say I appreciate what you're doing. I have 3 young kids at home. If I had to stay 3 nights away for an hour, hour and a half, I probably wouldn't be able to do it. So I appreciate all the time that you guys are giving. Anthony, does the chat work? Yes, it does. So far, so good on the chat. Carlos, loving to see the Colombians in here. There we go. There we go. All right, guys, we're going to start in about 30 more seconds to a minute, and then we're going to start it right at 7:05 Eastern Standard Time. We're at 4:05, guys. Let's see if we can hit this over 500. If we can hit over 500 on day 2, I would just be very impressed. Very, very impressed that we got that high. All right. Joelle from Maryland. Welcome. Anthony from Virginia Beach. Evan, we appreciate you doing this. I appreciate you, Evan, for giving me your time. I really, time is the most valuable asset that we all have. And I appreciate you guys sharing it with me tonight and yesterday and tomorrow. Hopefully you guys will be able to come back. Tomorrow's going to be the big shebang on that. Got Juliana from Darien. Glenn, High Five, Connecticut. Okay, we got Jeremy. Let's do some deals. Oh, we did a site visit. Let's go, man. Let's go. Okay, guys, we're right at 7:05, so we are going to get started. We're right at 4:30, 4:33. Let's see if we can do it once we get started. All right, let's share my screen, and let's get going. All right. Okay, guys, day 2. Due diligence decoded, how to analyze deals like a pro and avoid costly mistakes. And remember, guys, we are going to be later about probably 20 minutes from now. I'm going to have Zach Jensen, who was one of my students who acquired an accounting firm. He's going to be on the call. He's going to be right here. You guys are going to hear his story, and then you guys later on are going to be able to ask him and I questions at the end of tonight. So if you guys want to get to that part, stick with us. I promise we're going to try to make it worth your time. All right, so let's get going. Okay, so welcome back. I appreciate you guys. Hopefully most of you guys were here yesterday, but what we're going to do is we're going to go through kind of a quick recap of what we talked about yesterday so that as we move forward tonight, that you guys can take that information and we can build upon it, okay? So 60 to 90 minutes, we're going to hit it, and we're going to go about analyzing a business in 2 minutes or less and how to spot million-dollar opportunities that others will miss, okay? So here's the recap, and this is for Hannah. I think Hannah asked about the recap. We went over the 3 pillars of a perfect acquisition target. Remember, recession resistance, recurring revenue, barrier to entry. Those are the 3. How to reverse engineer your ideal business. Strategies for finding hidden gems deals off market. We talked about the off-market scripts, right? So then next was the building a power network of brokers and sellers. How do we build up that Rolodex to where they're sending us the deals, okay? 5, crafting your irresistible buyer narrative, okay? The buyer narrative, if you remember, was talking about how do we go out there and tell people, the people that are going to be involved in our acquisition, the lender, a potential investor, the buyer, the seller, the broker, all of them, how do they understand where you're coming from, why you're doing this, and how do you come up with that compelling narrative? So those are the things that we are looking for. Now, in just one day, you guys have gained knowledge that puts you ahead of pretty much 99% of potential buyers that are out there, okay? And today we're building on this knowledge to turn you guys into deal analyzing machines, okay? So Now let's see if you applied yesterday's lessons. Okay, so I asked you to do a couple things. One was define your ideal annual income, right? And reverse engineer your target business. Okay, remember we talked about that yesterday. Number 2 was identify 3 industries that meet the 3 pillars criteria: recession resistance, recurring revenue, and a barrier to entry. Craft a personalized outreach script for business owners and write your why statement, right? And we focus on why that's so important, your why statement and search narrative. Now, who wants to share their work? Now, I'm going to say, put it up in the chat. If you guys were able to find your ideal annual income, okay, 3 industries that you think meet those 3 pillar criteria, and just tell me yes or no if you did the personal outreach script. And then if you want, you can copy and paste in your why statement. I would love to see if anyone out there did all 4 things. And if you guys can paste it into the chat, just so I can see what you guys put there and to see how you did. Okay, so I will give you a couple seconds, see when you guys paste that into the chat. Okay, good. Okay, I'm seeing stuff coming through right now. I see ideal cash flow. I see 3 industries. Dan, good job on the industries, by the way. You did a good job with the 3 pillars. Nick is throwing up his stuff right now. Good, Lauren, good. Nail salon, dry cleaning. Yep, good. Caroline, let's see. Good job, Caroline. Yep, those count. Gary, didn't do the script, but did the rest. All right, okay, as long as you're going to do the script, because that's going to be hugely important when you're trying to build up that pipeline. All right, what else we got here? Kevin, counting tax barbershop. Yeah, I like the medical billing, by the way. Good addition. Pet services, cosmetics, financial services, cleaning services. Good job, Bo. Very good. Jenny, good. Okay, you guys are seemingly getting it. Kelly, I see yours too. Kaden, good stuff. Nargis, yep. Yeah, ATM, laundromat, HVAC. That is a trifecta there. Good. Awesome. You guys are awesome. I appreciate you guys putting in the time and the effort to actually do the homework. This is great. This is going to help you guys so much that you actually went forward and actually did the work. This is great. Don't worry, Shamara, for missing the script. It happens. You can work on it as you go tonight as well. Good job, guys. I'm seeing them keep on rolling in. I think I haven't seen one that actually did a bad job when it came to choosing the 3 industries. Awesome. Keep it coming. If you haven't put it in there, keep it coming. I want to make sure we keep going so you guys, we can make the most of your time tonight. Okay, so today's agenda, 2-minute deal technique. How do you evaluate any business in 120 seconds or less? I'm going to do that live, right? I'm actually going to look at a listing and going to see how I do this. Second thing, the golden ratio, secret weapon for spotting undervalued businesses. So basically the golden ratio is a way in which it tells us very quickly if this is a business worth our time or not, based on its profitability. Okay, we're going to talk about it, why it works, and how to do the math. Number 3, core questions to ask during initial diligence, the make or break questions. Okay, that tell you whether or not you're going to spend a minute more in that conversation with the broker or the seller. Okay, so that's hugely important. And by the way, I see we have over 500 people now in the call. So I appreciate you guys. Thank you for coming back. That's way more than expected. Let's go. Okay, financial and managerial diligence deep dive. How to identify profitable deals and opportunities for growth. We're also going to go over red flags to watch out for, the warning signs. Okay, this is when we go through a personal experience of mine about diligence and not doing it correctly. So we're going to get into that story in a little bit. And then, of course, as I mentioned before, everybody, the live 7-figure acquisition breakdown with Zach Jensen. All right. I told you guys already, he was a student of mine, came in, and he crushed it, and he was able to buy an accounting firm without being an accountant. And he's looking to cash flow over 7 figures in his first year. So he's going to be here. He's going to talk about a story, and he'll be at the end as well if you guys want to ask him specific questions about his acquisition. So by the end of today, guys, you're going to have all the skills to confidently evaluate any business that crosses your path. So let's dive in. So proper diligence is the difference between buying a cash cow or a money pit. Okay, and here's why. By doing proper diligence, you're going to see the true health and potential of a business, not just what the seller or the broker is putting out there for you to look at. Okay. Of course, when someone is selling their business, they're going to put lipstick on it. They're going to make it look as pretty as possible. And they're not going to tell you any of the bad things, only the good things, right? And diligence is on us, the buyer, to make sure that we are going to leave no stone unturned, and we're going to find anything that is wrong with that business so we can make an informed decision on whether or not this is a deal that we want to do. Okay. It uncovers hidden risks and liabilities. It gives us leverage in negotiations. Okay. We'll talk a lot about that in a little bit. It ensures you're making an informed decision and you're not gambling, and it protects your investment. Okay. This is a huge investment. A lot of times, this is going to be the biggest investment that you have ever done. It definitely was for me. Okay. We want to make sure that we're putting the right steps in place. We're looking at the right companies, and we're doing everything possible to make sure that this deal is a good deal for us. Okay. Here's a little quote from Warren Buffett. Price is what you pay. Value is what you get. Okay. So again, at the end of the day, price is only one part of a business acquisition. Okay. The value is something that you're going to find out in the diligence phase, which is what we're talking about tonight. You make your money when you buy, not when you sell. And with the right deal, funding becomes the easy part. And I'll say that part again, because some people don't believe this. And Zach can probably attest to it as well. If you have a great deal a deal that the numbers look amazing in a great industry with a great team. Finding money to buy it is easy. Okay, the hard part is finding that deal. Okay, now proper analysis turns uncertainty into calculated opportunity. Okay, your fortune is made by buying well. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about my $150,000 mistake. Okay, so it's very easy when you are online and you're talking about all your successes and here's all the things I've done right and look at all the money that I make. At the end of the day, every successful entrepreneur out there has lost money and has made mistakes. And that's how they became successful, is they realized what their mistakes are and they decided to keep on trying, getting smarter every time. You guys, I'm sure Zach can tell you the same story, that before he started making the money he's making now, he made some mistakes. Okay, so my $150K mistake was I decided to go and acquire a business in Miami, an aluminum construction business. And this is a big part of my background in not wanting any of my students to buy construction companies. So on the outset, the sellers looked like it was a great business. They said it was making all this cash flow. They showed us some statements. It looked good. It checked out. We visited, did a site visit, all very nice people, great team. Okay. So instead of investing the time and energy that I normally do and money to due diligence, I thought, you know what? I think this looks good. It's not that big of a deal, so I can take the risk and let me just go ahead and acquire it. So then bought the company, and at first everything seemed to be going well. Then a few months into it, I realized that it really wasn't making the profit that I thought. So I was really diving into all the details and started to realize that there was two main issues that I had missed. One was that the suppliers who gave the aluminum to this company had a special deal with the previous owners. And as soon as I took over, that deal was gone. Now, if I had actually done diligence and looked at the contracts for that supplier, I would have realized that once those owners were gone, once my company came over, they had no obligation to give me the same pricing. So that's one. And that was huge and increased our costs dramatically and our profitability dropped dramatically. The second was I thought that the first mistake was buying in Miami. Yeah, you got it, Patrick. The second mistake was thinking that my accounts receivable was which is a blessing. It was over $500,000 in accounts receivable. And I thought that was amazing. That $500K is going to come to me. Well, little did I realize that the previous owners took that, the way that it works in this business, they put down a deposit. That deposit could be anywhere from 25% to 50% of the job. And then when you go through the permitting process and everything else, they go and do the work, and then you get the remaining funds. Well, the sellers got a bunch of deposits for a bunch of jobs, and they did not give that to us, the new buyers. Now, if I had actually done my diligence, I would have realized this and demanded that all of those deposits came to me after the sale. They did not. So now I inherited $500,000 worth of accounts receivable that was actually losing me money because the customer already paid 25, sometimes up to 50% of that job already. And now I was obligated to go finish the other 50% of it without having the first payment. And so I would finish it, they would pay me, and I'd be underwater 10, 20%. Okay. And so this was really messed up, Alex. It was very shady. Yes, it was. Absolutely. But at the end of the day, it's not the seller's fault. Okay. Yeah, they might have known about it. Yeah, they might have been laughing their way to the bank. But at the end of the day, it was my fault because I did not follow the rule of always doing diligence. Diligence is not just going to show you the money that's in their bank, right? It's going to show you accounts receivable. It's going to show you working capital requirements. It's going to show you the real true cash flow over the last few years. So if I had seen that and done the real diligence, I would have realized, wait, hold on a sec. Okay, one, that contract doesn't come to me from the suppliers. So therefore, my costs are going to go way up and the profitability is going to go way down. And two, that accounts receivable list is a detriment to me unless I get all of those deposits transferred to me so that I'm not underwater on all of this work. Okay, so again, it was on me at the end of the day. As you're going through this process, the fault is on us. Anything that goes wrong in this game is on you, okay? Which is why we do so much training on the pathway and strategy to do these things right. Because if you don't do them right, it can be a very costly mistake, which my $150,000 mistake was. Now, since then, I've done over 5 acquisitions. All of those I did diligence on. Those are ones that are making me money, and I'm not involved in the day-to-day. And so this was a mistake where a lot of people probably would have gave up. That's a lot of money to lose. But I didn't. I licked my wounds. I realized what I did wrong. I moved on, and I did it correctly. Okay. But I wanted to tell you guys that story. One, to show that I'm not perfect. I made mistakes, right? Anyone who's in this game is going to make mistakes if you're here long enough. Hopefully I make fewer of them as I move on and get better at what I do. But talking about this is also important because you're going to go through this process and there's going to be times when you make mistakes, you're going to come up against obstacles. And the goal is you keep pushing through. You make the mistake, you lick your wounds, you move on and live another day. Okay. So I learned my mistake and now diligence is the thing that I focus so much on so that this never happens again. All right. So how proper diligence helped Nick buy $800K in cash flow for 0 down. Okay, Nick actually ended up getting a luxury marine upholstery company that kind of refits all the stuff on yachts. Awesome business, and he did a great job, seller finance deal, but he did great diligence and he was able to structure that deal in a way that protected him. Now, talking through this, the 2-minute technique and the golden ratio. Okay, so we're going to go through rapid assessment on financials, the business model, market position, red flags, and then owner involvement. And the golden ratio, we're going to talk about this in a little bit more detail coming up in the slides. So if I go through this too fast, don't worry. We're going to jump into it in more details. The golden ratio, the formula is going to be revenue divided by SDE, or so revenue divided by cash flow. The target we're looking for is between 15 and 35%. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. Why? Higher ratio equals a potentially better deal, but not always. And we're going to talk about why not always. Okay. This is an easy technique as we go and look at online listings for us to tell what is worth our time and what is not worth our time. Okay. The 2-minute technique. Now, this is your first line of defense. Okay. In 120 seconds, you can get a solid initial read on any kind of business listing. I'm going to do it right now and show you how I do this. Okay. So let's move into right here. Okay. So I'm going to move over to share my screen and we're going to go through a deal live. All right, guys, you should see this right now. This is a residential water pump, filtration pump, and purification business for sale in Palm Beach County, Florida. So that's right across the state for me because I'm on the southwest coast. Okay, so real quick, we're going to do this in 120 seconds. I'm going to show you why this is a good or bad deal. First thing we're going to do is the golden ratio, which means we're going to take the revenue, which right here is $907,000, $907, $939, and we're going to divide that. We're going to take the cash flow, 263. And then we're going to divide that into the 907, 939, and we're going to get 28%, 28.9%. So it's right between the 15 and 35%. We're going to talk about why that's important in a second. Next, what we're going to look at is we're going to see that it's over 5 years old. Is it? Yes, 2005. So we're good there. Moving on. We're going to go down here and we're going to see if they're going to talk about why they're selling as well as if there is financing for the business. So we'll go down here. Let's see. Financing. Broker will assist with SBA guaranteed loan up to 15% cash injection. Okay. Good. That means that they've already looked through the SBA guidelines and this should qualify for an SBA loan. Next, what is the reason for selling? Retirement. Okay. Boom. Awesome. If I look at my watch, we probably did that in a minute, not even 2 minutes. Now, looking at this, it hit the golden ratio, right? It was between 15 and 35%. It's older than 5 years old. It's a good business in a good growing area, and it's for retirement purposes, and it's SBA already pre-approved. Boom. We are done with our analysis. This is worth us now contacting the broker here. You put in your name, send the message, or right here, you get the phone number and you give Mr. Robert Dolan a call. Okay. All right. Now let's jump back into the presentation. Okay. So 2-minute technique, financials. We looked at profit margins. We looked at cash flow, business model. Is it something that is a good business for us to have? Market position, red flags, and owner involvement. Now let's dive into like the golden ratio, like I mentioned, and tell you why that is a good method to use to make sure when you're looking at these deals, you're not wasting your time on businesses that are going to just be a money pit. Okay. So there's the 2-minute calculation as we just talked about. Actually, it should be backwards here. It's SDE divided by revenue. So you take the SDE divided by revenue and it gives you the golden ratio. We're looking between 15 and 35% for good deals. Now, the reason why we're looking between those profit margins is because less than 15%, when you're looking at a profit margin on a business, it starts to get really, really tight. Now, there are business models out there like restaurants and grocery stores that operate off of very tiny margins because they're doing a volume game. That is obviously, you can have a successful business like that. But when we're talking about buying our first business and acquiring our first cash flowing businesses, those are harder businesses to be successful in. I want businesses that have a profit margin that is more than 15%. I want enough cushion there so that if anything happens after I take this thing over and we lose customers or the supplier jacks up their price, we have cushion in our margins to absorb that. Okay, below 15%, you can have something happen and now you're not going to be able to afford your loan payments. That is not where we want to be. Now, why not over 35%? Okay, so why not over 35%? Most of the time, because the question you're going to say to yourself right now is, well, Ben, the more profitable it is, isn't that better? Sometimes yes, most of the time no. When we're looking at small businesses, sub $10 million businesses, if you see something with more than 35% profit margin, and there's cases in accounting firms where it's a little bit different, but in general, if you see over 35% profit margin, it means that the owner is doing all the work. They have very few employees. They're working 40+ hour weeks, and they are doing everything, which is why their profit margin is higher because they're not hiring other people to do that work. Now, as I mentioned on day one, that is not the type of business that you want to buy, right? We're doing this so that we can build financial freedom. We're doing this so we can buy a business and there's enough cash flow in that business to have a full-time GM who's running it or having the seller stay on after the acquisition to run that business. You do not want to be buying a full-time job. So anything over 35%, there is a very high likelihood, with few exceptions, where that is a business where you are buying a job. Okay, so that's why we're trying to constrain it between 15 and 35%. Okay, and I see in the chat right here, yes, it is backwards when it comes to the formula. It is SDE divided by revenue. I wrote that wrong in the slides. That's on me. So switch that around. SDE divided by revenue will give you the golden ratio. Okay, so let's go over here. Okay, we just went through that and we went through the biz, buy, sell. So now let's move on to the 3 crucial questions for diligence. Okay, so these are 3 questions that once you are looking at the listing and having the first conversation with the broker, because remember in that example, I looked on biz, buy, sell, I saw that listing, I did the golden ratio, I looked to see if it was financeable by SBA, I looked to see if what was the reason for the seller selling the business, and it said retirement, right? So it fit all of our the check boxes that we were able to move forward and now connect with the seller, the broker. So the reason why we're always looking for things that are SBA pre-qualified, for instance. Now, many times you guys are going to look at those listings and it won't mention financing at all. That doesn't mean that it's not SBA pre-qualified or SBA won't be willing to loan on that deal. It just means that the broker hasn't done the extra work, okay? So if you don't see anything there, then I would definitely still go ahead, contact the broker, because more often than not, they just didn't do the work, okay? Now, the seller and GM willing to stay on. When you finally jump on the call with the broker, this is one of your first initial questions, because I don't care how much money the business makes. I don't care how cool the industry is. I don't care about all the other things about how I'm going to grow this business. If the seller and if there's no GM and the seller's not willing to stay on the GM, it kind of ruins the entire thing for me, because I don't want to run the business, okay? So I need the seller to stay on and run the business for me. Typically, he's going to get a piece of equity. He's going to get paid well, but I can step away from the day-to-day operations and he can do that. Or there's a GM that's already in the business, already running it for the seller, and he wants to stay on and continue to do it for me. Awesome. Third option, there's no GM, the seller's leaving, but there's a longtime manager or someone who can easily step into that GM role. He already has the trust of all the employees, and he would be a great person to do that, right? If there's none of that, then I'm not interested. So that's one of the first things that I'm going to ask the broker on that call, all right? Third, why is this owner selling? So if it shows retirement in the listing, I'm not going to really, I'll still ask the question, but he's probably just going to repeat it back, retirement, and that's fine. If it's anything but retirement, I want to find out why. There's plenty of good reasons to sell a business. They could be getting divorced. They could be having, God forbid, they could have health reasons. They could be just, wanting to sell the business because they've worked hard for 10, 15 years and they want to enjoy their life. There could be a bunch of different reasons that are all legitimate, but I still want to understand the motivation for 2 reasons. 1, it will help me decide whether or not he's trying to get rid of something that's not good. And 2, it also helps me, just gives me some leverage in negotiating. If I know why this person wants to sell, okay, then I know how motivated they are, and it can help me in deciding what number to come in at in that negotiation process. So we want to understand exactly where that is coming from. Now, these are your first line of defense. I don't want you guys to think these as questions. These are literally, they're going to protect your time, because it's very easy to go down a rabbit hole of spending hours talking to brokers on deals that you never should have wasted a minute on. Okay, so I want you guys to take this seriously. Get to the heart of the matter first with the broker. See if these answers are correct. If they're correct, great. Spend another 30 minutes talking with them. But if not, do not waste your time doing that. All right. Okay, so let's dive into the numbers, because at the end of the day, they're the reason why you're buying the business. So we're going to be looking at a couple different things when it comes to the numbers. One is we're looking for revenue trends. Okay, we're looking for consistent revenue growth in the numbers. Now, you're going to see a lot of businesses where you'll see kind of a chart that looks like this, like revenue is going up, it dips a little bit, then goes up again, and kind of dips a little bit and goes up. But overall, the trend is going in one direction up. If you see a business where you look at their last 3 years of P&Ls, right, and this is after you talk to the broker and he sends you a SIM, a confidential information memorandum. He's going to send that to you. Inside of there, you're going to have a breakdown of the last 3 years of their finances. And if it shows on that graph that this thing is going all over the place, right, every year it's up, every year it's down, that right off the bat is a red flag. That is not a business that you want to have at all. Just scratch it off. Thank you very much, Mr. Broker. I'm moving on. Okay. We want consistent growth. It could be flat, right? Because maybe it's a retirement type business, and the guy has not wanted to grow for like the last 10 years because he was retiring soon. So seeing a business like this is fine. Seeing a business that's growing is great. Seeing a business that is having crazy, wild roller coaster years, not good. And seeing businesses that are going the opposite direction is the worst. Okay. So make sure that the revenue trend looks healthy. Profit margins. Now, profit margins, as revenues increase, profit margins should also be slowly, let me rephrase that. Profit should be increasing. Now, profit margins are a little bit different, because you can increase revenue, but your margins start to shrink because you're taking on more overhead, you're taking on more employees, you have more costs. So what we're looking for is actually how much profit, and this comes into the third one, which is cash flow. How much cash flow, and what does that chart look like as they've been increasing revenue year over year? As revenue increased, did the cash flow increase as well? Or is revenue increasing and cash flow staying flat? Or, as I've seen, you see revenue increasing and cash flow going down, okay? If that's the case, it doesn't immediately mean you throw it away. You definitely want to ask the question, though. There are some businesses out there that grow really quick. And so they go out and they buy a bunch of equipment. They hire a bunch of employees because they need to meet the demand. Well, guess what? The numbers on that year of growth might look great in revenue, but really bad in cash flow because they spent all their money to grow the business. Okay. So there could be legitimate reasons why cash flow is not keeping up with the growth trend of revenue. But if you see that, you got to dive in to understand why. Okay. Just make a list of questions that you're going to go and talk to the broker with. Next, working capital. Okay. So what I like to do for working capital, and you guys can write this down, is I want to look at 3 months. Okay. I'm going to take an average of 3 months throughout the year. And what is the overhead expenses? What are their typical expenses on those months? Okay. So let's say you're looking at a business and they spend around $50,000 a month in expenses. That's for payroll. That's for fuel for the trucks. It's for inventory, whatever. It's $50,000 a month. All right. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to times it by 3. 50,000 times 3 is 150,000. That's at least the minimum amount of working capital I want to have. Now, working capital could be a couple different things. It could be a line of credit. Most of the time when you guys do an SBA loan, they're also going to give you a line of credit. So you're going to get the loan plus a line of credit. And that line of credit, you want at least 3 months of expenses in that amount. I like to get 6 months. I always want to have more working capital than I ever need. Most time people make a mistake in getting too little. And now you're scrounging around, asking for investors, going back to the bank, and you don't want to be in that position. So make sure that you really load up on that working capital. So at least 3 months of monthly expenses in a line of credit or a working capital loan. Okay. Okay, here's some red flags to watch out for when you're talking about working capital management. One, and this is during diligence. Okay, so this is when you're actually having a CPA who knows M&A doing this diligence. This is not you. Don't worry like that. You're the one who has to go through all these things. I do not do this. I pay somebody to do this. This is something that you need an expert to do. Okay, so 1, consistently late payments to suppliers. Not a good sign. Overly generous customer credit terms. Not a good sign. Excessive inventory levels, meaning like stuff's just piling up in the warehouse. It's not moving. Not a good sign. Negative working capital ratio. Not a good sign. And it relies on short-term debt for operations. Okay, using credit cards to kind of cover them until the next payment comes in. Not good signs. All of these should make pretty good sense to you. But this is the things that good due diligence is going to look for. If I had this on that deal that I talked about, my $150,000 mistake, I would never have made that business decision. Okay, next is the management structure. We just talked about the financial aspect. Now we're going to talk about the management. Management is key. You need a good team. A good team is harder to find than everything else when it comes to a business. Okay, so we need to focus and hyper-focus on that in diligence. So we're looking at the management team. Who are the leaders? How long have they been around? Are they really good at what they do? What do all the people that work under them say about them? Okay. The organizational structure. How do decisions get made? Are your team leaders, are they able to make decisions when they're on the job? Or do they have to call in the general manager every time that something goes up? Or do they have to call the owner to do that, right? Figure out how do they communicate through the different levels of their organization. We want to make sure that the organizational structure is strong and it's multi-layered. We do not want the guys who are turning the widget to be calling the boss every time they have a question. Okay, we want to have multiple layers of management. So you want to look and see what that organizational structure looks like. Key personnel, identify critical employees and retention risk. Now this is kind of like your key man risk. Are there certain employees in this business where if they leave, the whole thing collapses like a house of cards? Okay, there's a lot of businesses out there where they have 1 or 2 key employees where they're pretty much the whole business relies upon them. You don't want to be in that position. Or if you're in that position and you have a company where it has a key man risk, you need to plan for it. You need to get that key personnel in a specific contract with you that protects you in case they decide to leave one day or decide to just do something bad and they get fired or whatever the case would be. You want to have protections for yourself. You want to have redundancies. And so making sure during that diligence phase, you're finding out if there's any other key personnel that give you that key man risk. Okay, in theory and practice are not the same, right? So let's move from theory to reality. Okay, so right now I'm excited to introduce someone who's been exactly where you guys are now and has achieved what you're aiming for. So let's welcome Zach Jensen to the call. Zach, if you're there, you can jump on. I'll kind of go through a little intro for you, man, and then I'll give you the reins here.
Let's do it.
All right, so just to let you guys know, I have Zach here, so I'm going to go through this one last slide, telling a little bit about his story, and then he's going to take over. But Zach was one of my first group of people pretty much that came through Acquisition Ace, which is my group where I teach my students how to buy a business. And Zach from the beginning was someone who came in, he was hungry. He just gave every single bit of effort to get an acquisition done. He would not take no for an answer. Believe me, and he might tell you a little bit about his story. He hit every obstacle known to man, including the broker trying to sabotage his deal constantly. But yeah, he was able to move through and get his deal done. All right, so Zach, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm going to tell everyone a little bit about your story, and you can take it from here.
Yeah, I tried to repress that memory, so thanks for bringing that back. But yeah, how's it going, everyone? So I'm Zach. When I first heard about kind of this business acquisition thing, I had tried a lot of different things. Ben was talking about earlier how entrepreneurs lose a lot of money before they eventually hit on one thing. I tried, oil and gas investing. I had tried a lot of LP related type investing. So I tried to get into these other asset classes that just ended up blowing up in my face, frankly. So I eventually stumbled upon a lot of Ben's content. He was saying a lot of really interesting things about, recession-resistant businesses, things that were boring, and I was kind of down on my luck. So I was like, that's what I need, right? I don't want to make another mistake. If this can't work, nothing can, type thing. So I was pretty skeptical that you could just buy a business. Like, why would someone sell something like this? They're making, oftentimes, high six figures, in my case, low seven figures. I was like, why would they even sell this sort of thing? It doesn't really make sense to me. I also had a lot of doubts around, if I even had what it took to run a business. I mean, I was a software engineer. I was an employee. I had managed some teams, but I hadn't run a business before. I didn't know what that even meant. What did the CEO even do? Like, I didn't know any of that stuff. And then when it came down to financing, I'm not super rich. I didn't come from a rich family or anything like that. I didn't even know how I could afford something like this, what the financing looked like. And, or worse, what if I actually did close on a business and then I took it over and ran it into the ground, right? I mean, that sort of stuff would keep me up at night and, really scare me. I'm thankful to say that that's no longer the case. So, going on to the next slide here. My journey was not smooth sailing. I definitely struggled a lot in the beginning. Like Ben said earlier, it's about finding the deal. If you have the deal, money comes. I mean, everything else gets a lot easier. And in the beginning, I did not have the deal. I was trying to, find what industry to get into. I tried all sorts of industries. I tried different things that didn't really fit my skill set. And then when I learned about kind of accounting firms, I started learning about that and found it matched my personality and my skill set a lot more. So started getting more into that. And but before that, I started even to question my decision, like, why did I even join this group? Why am I spending all this time talking with brokers? I mean, it didn't really feel good in the beginning, but after that, I kind of took advantage of all the support I had at my disposal. And with time, I realized that kind of all the barriers I was experiencing, it's just part of the game. They're just in my head. I can get past it, and overcame that initial skepticism and followed the same step-by-step process we're talking about tonight on this call. I mean, I went through everything that we were talking about, and I went from just writing code for a lot of kind of software companies to owning my own accounting firm, and we'll do about $2.1 million this year in revenue. And I'm building real sustainable wealth, right? All that money I'm making from the business, I'm buying other assets with in a tax advantage way, because now I know taxes. I own an accounting firm. So it's a trifecta, if you will, of, entrepreneurship goes into these real estate and stocks type things. So that's a whole other separate call. But to kind of give you an insight in my acquisition, I found a multi-million-dollar accounting firm with over 6,000 clients. Okay. What attracted me to the deal? Accounting is recession resistant, right? It's very, very, very sticky revenue. Probably the most sticky revenue business I've ever seen. Like 90+% stickiness, like under 5% churn, lots of room for improvement as well. These sort of accounting businesses, they're what Ben would call fax machine businesses, right? Where you go in there, there's a big pile of paper this high, and there's fax machines and all this kind of stuff, and it's very optimistic. It's like being a kid in a candy shop. I went from solving like algorithms and software architecture problems to, hey, just add Google Drive. Hey, just add kind of all these very basic tech things. So it was very complementary to my skill set. But you don't need to be a software engineer to know that. So just a little kind of encouragement. But yeah, after finding the firm that caught my eye, I immediately just poured everything I could into the deal by applying the due diligence techniques Ben talked about. I was able to evaluate the deal very quickly using the kind of stuff we talked about on this call, and was able to get in front of the broker very quickly. And, I noticed some key information that gave me plenty of leverage in negotiating the deal, which was the owner was doing a lot of the work. Okay. Ben talks about key man risk in accounting. While there aren't a lot of risks on the customer side, on revenue coming back, I mean, the problem is not clients, people. The problem is building that team, making sure you have that team. But I knew that was a problem I could mitigate against, which we can talk about later. But the business lacked basic systems. It was really just an accountant who had kind of reached his peak and thought he wanted to retire. We'll get into that in a second. They didn't even have a website when I bought the firm. I mean, it was, again, kid in a candy shop. If you're a tech guy and you're solving all these really hard problems, seeing this business where the problems aren't that difficult, doesn't really feel like work to do. I mean, it was a significant relief to get into it. So once I realized it was the right deal for me, I immediately began working on a structure to create a win-win scenario for my seller, which aligned with his goals and protecting my personal interests. So my seller thought he wanted to retire, but and I've seen this on multiple deals now, where I present a business plan and I say, look, you're burnt out. You're doing everything in the business. You're doing payroll. You're managing people. You're doing all the tax work. You're dealing with all the customer inquiries. You're doing the sales, the marketing. Like, why not just let me do all that stuff, and you can focus on the CPA work that you actually love to do, which is why you got in this business to begin with. And he was a younger guy. He's 48. And, he was blown away. Like, wow, I didn't even know this was a thing. Like, I thought I was just going to sell to another CPA and he was going to suffer the same misery I was for the last 20 years and just keep repeating that. But I said, no, we're going to turn this sucker into a real business, and I'm going to help you do all the non-technical stuff that you don't like doing. So let's talk turkey here. Numbers. Total deal size was $2.1 million. I put $230,000 of my own money down. Now, for those that don't have $230,000, I could have got this money very easily. There was probably a list of 10, 12 people I knew that I could have called and gotten that entire amount of equity injected. So I didn't use their money. Why? Because I wanted to use my money because the return on investment here was ludicrous and I wanted to get a good return on my money. Going back to the key man risk situation, Ben talks about key man risk. If you don't plan for it, you're going to get burned. I made sure of that. So I took Ben's advice here. I got the seller to sign a $550,000 seller note, which was contingent on revenue not dropping in the next 2 years. So I bought the business and I had 2 years of, hey, revenue can't drop or else the seller note goes bye-bye. And then I financed the rest with the SBA.
Awesome. Now, and I see a lot of questions right now in the chat about the deal and more specifics. Well, guess what? Zach's going to be on the end of the call with me during Q&A. So if you guys do have specific questions about his deal, you guys can ask. Okay. So we're going through the presentation, getting through all this information, and we're definitely going to have more time for that. So Zach, you can finish up on your story here, and then we'll move on into the rest of the presentation.
Sounds good. Yeah, I want to get to everyone's questions. I really hate when I'm on webinars and I ask a question and never gets answered, right? So I'm at the end. Ask me all the questions then. I want to answer absolutely as many as possible. So yeah, just to wrap it up here, my life looks completely different now. I was working 70 hours a week, sometimes 80 or more, and I didn't take a vacation. I was really burnt out. Now I run this 7-figure business remotely from California where, I stay now. My business is in Virginia. I fly there 5 to 6 times a week or 5 to 6 weeks per year to do change management stuff, like grow the business, hire people, really just kind of like critical changes. I personally want to be there. I don't think I have to be, but I just like to be. And I work probably 10 to 15 hours a week on this stuff. My mindset has shifted from employee to owner. So I'm always thinking about, hey, how do I get a good return on capital? How do I grow the business? How do I invest in people? Now I'm thinking about that sort of thing rather than just like, hey, how much money am I going to make? Because that part kind of takes care of itself if you take care of these things. I'm projecting over $1 million in profit this year. Between you guys, it'll probably be a little more, but plans to scale to 8 figures. In the next, I think conservatively 5 years we'll hit 10 million in revenue, and then we'll be at about 40% profit margin. At that point, I would like to exit for a nice 8-figure exit. So
Awesome.
yeah, and that's something that I don't know if we've covered on this call, but I'd love to tease out is as your revenue and EBITDA grows, well, we buy at like 2 to 5x for a small business, but very shortly after, if we just triple EBITDA, which is a few year journey, right? It's not a walk in the park, but just simply by doing that, getting it to a certain stage, we can suddenly exit for low teens. So you can imagine a scenario where one buys let's say accounting firm and it makes $1 million a year for 2x, which is what I did. And if they get it to 3x and exit for low teens, let's just say 13, that's $39 million. Okay. And there are family offices and private equity and all these kind of big groups that are kind of chomping at the bit to buy this stuff because they're going to go and flip it to the next level. So a bit off topic. I'm sorry if this is
that's
all,
awesome.
but just kind of tease that out. I mean, that's what's possible once you get into this sort of thing. So anyways, I'll let it get back to you, Ben.
Awesome. No, I appreciate you, Zach. And to what Zach is saying, guys, like we haven't spent time at all on this presentation. But talking through kind of not just the buy, but what happens when you exit and how do you go about after you've acquired a business and growing it. And then that multiple just doubling or tripling on the back end is where you make that life-changing wealth. Like this one deal for Zach, good. He bought it for $2 million and very easily could be selling it over $10 million in the next couple of years. Okay. And that's a one and done type deal. And that is not something that's crazy. That's not like 1 in a billion. There's a very simple process to do that. It's hard, it takes time, but it's simple, the strategy to do it. And so I appreciate you, Zach, going through your story and everything else. And like I said, everybody, Zach's going to be at the end of the call. So if you have questions, you can jump in there and make sure you ask them. But thanks, Zach. Appreciate it, man.
Cheers. And I'll try to answer a few in the chat, but if we don't get to everything, Q&A.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely. Awesome. All right, guys. So then as we take through that, now I want you guys to take a second to envision kind of what this could be. So 120 days into the future. All right. You've gone through everything that we're talking about. You're able to work and super hard, and now you own a business. Okay. That business, if we're taking the exact example, now it's generating substantial cash flow. You're working fewer hours than you did before you bought the business, and you have the freedom to work from anywhere. Just in the exact case, he lives in California, but the business is actually in Virginia, right? You can't get much further apart from each other. One, he lives in the West Coast. His business is on the East Coast. So you guys can ask more questions at the end when it comes to the multiples and how that works. But let me just say what Zach is doing here is a perfect representation of how you can take one deal and turn it into life-changing wealth. Okay, so the question comes down to, is this something that you guys want to do, right? We talked through on the first day, which is the sourcing, the second day, which is the diligence. And tomorrow we're going to be talking about the funding, right? How do you get these deals funded? So as we are moving into that, Okay, here's a couple different things that a couple other people that are in our group. This is Lindsay. She just acquired a carpet cleaning business for $1 million. And at the end of the day, she's going to be bringing home about $150,000 a year in cash flow. You have Sean here, who was able to go and acquire a business as well. You guys can check out these on Trustpilot /acquisition ace. And Brian right here, he's one of our Canadian guys who was able to do a trailer manufacturing business, and he was able to do it with seller financing. Nick here, again, I showed you a little bit back. Nick was also the guy who did the upholstery business that works for yachts and everything else in Fort Lauderdale to do it. So I hope you guys have been taking notes. You guys have been doing the homework. And as you guys are looking at this and putting it into practice, if you were to start doing this right now, as of yesterday, if you guys focus on the steps that we're giving you, you could be 120 days away from doing this, from actually getting your first deal done. Okay. So now let's break down the due diligence process into an actionable timeline. Okay. Because a lot of times I think we get lost in the details of like, what's the formula for the golden ratio? And what do we do here? What do we do there? So let's break this down in a way that becomes, you can start to see how far away this is really from being accomplished. All right. Pre-LOI phase. This is the letter of intent, right? The letter of intent is when you're making your offer. So pre-offer phase. The goal, you're finding a deal, you're doing your initial assessment, you're making sure that this thing is worth your time. You're focusing on financials, market position, and seeing if there's any major red flags. And the outcome of this is a go, no-go decision, right? Do I want to make an offer on the business? Do I not want to make an offer on the business? Okay, that is in the pre-LOI phase. Post-LOI, so this means after you've submitted a letter of intent to the seller saying, hey, here is what I'm interested in buying your business for. Here are the terms. Are you interested? And they say yes, and they sign that deal. After that happens, now we're in day 45. And this is, again, these are estimates. Some people take longer than others. Some people take shorter than others. Day 45 to day 80. This is where you're really diving into diligence, where you're bringing on someone who's a M&A CPA who knows what to look for, diving deep into these deals. They're looking at the financials. They're looking at bank statements from 3 years ago. They're looking at the operations, market dynamics, everything about this deal. And they're going to present that report back to you so you have a clear understanding of, is this a business I want to do or not do? Okay. So then, as I mentioned, you're bringing in the legal, you're bringing in a lawyer who's also making sure that this business doesn't have any judgments against it. It doesn't have any kind of bad background or clients where you're going to inherit. So we make sure that all of that's clear. And remember, the findings here are going to impact deal terms. So I don't want you to think like this is locked in. So let's say you find a business you like, you make an offer. Now you're looking under the hood and you find something that's not that good, right? It changes actually how profitable it is. They said they were making $300,000 a year, but actually they're making $200,000 a year. And you can prove it with the due diligence you did. Well, now you can renegotiate those deal terms. You go back to the seller and say, hey, my CPA went through all of your bank statements and you're not making $300K, you're making $200K. And I offered you a 3X on your multiple. So when you were $300K times 3, that's $900,000 I was offering you. Well, now I know that you're only making $200K. And so times 3, that's $600,000. So now I'm going to offer you $300,000 less because of what the diligence said. You absolutely can do that. That's the importance of diligence. Before you lock in that sale price in the purchase agreement, you are making sure that you are going in eyes wide open, knowing exactly what you're getting into. Okay. All right. So how to close and receive a paycheck on day one after acquiring a new deal. So you got the business under LOI, you got the purchase agreement signed, you completed the due diligence process. Now you're making sure that you get your LLC all set up, the closing date is set, and now you're waiting for the bank. They're going to ask you for a million things throughout the process, a million pieces of paperwork. You're going to be signing a bunch of different documents. And if all goes well, comes closing day, and you've now acquired your business. 1 to 2 weeks later, you're going to be able to get your first paycheck because you're the boss, and now you're paying yourself a salary, right? So you can get a deal done with zero out of pocket if you get outside funding or a loan from a bank or a seller note or a mixture of all three. And you're going to start seeing that ROI literally a couple of weeks later, okay? Now, tomorrow, we're going to be diving deep into the funding strategies that we use and I teach my students to use so that they can get these deals done with little, sometimes zero out of pocket, but definitely reducing their amount of capital that they're injecting into the deal. And we talk through some creative financing strategies. So tomorrow, that is what we're going to be talking about in depth. Okay, so if you want, we talked about sourcing on day one, finding the deal. Today, we talked about how we look at these deals. Tomorrow, we talked about how we're going to fund these deals. Okay, so tomorrow is kind of the capstone of understanding exactly how this process works from start to finish. So let's do a recap real quick. 2-minute deal analysis is what we did today. We did that we looked at this by sell, and we kind of did a quick little 2-minute recap. Golden ratio. We know exactly how to use that, so we know if this deal is worth our time or not. Core 3 questions for initial diligence. We talked about the management. We talked about the financial diligence, right? The organizational structure. We asked those core 3 questions. Financial metrics and red flags. What are they? The importance of the managerial structural assessment, because we want to buy a team, not just a business. Okay, I'll say it again. We're buying a team. The team is what's valuable. in that business, because that is what's going to continue to run it day after day. We also went through Zach's story. We saw the theory I've been talking about, and then we actually talked about someone to put into practice. Okay. And then we did a timeline of diligence and what that looks like. So over the last 2 days, you guys have invested now at this point multiple hours with me. Could have been watching Netflix, could have been spending time with your kids, your family, or if you're an early sleeper, you could have been in bed, right? Now, you guys chose to be here. Second night in a row, we have over 600 people that are on this call now, almost an hour into the night. And that blows me away. It shows that you guys are serious about building generational wealth and doing this, okay? So the last 2 days, we did the 3 pillars, right? We talked about off-market sourcing. We talked about the 2-minute deal technique. We talked about the golden ratio, okay? And I know I'm saying this fast, but this is all the things that we went over. We talked about the red flags to look out for. We talked about the due diligence process and what that includes. And we also walked through a real case study of a 7-figure acquisition and how Zach was able to go and do that. So tomorrow, we're going to cover the zero down funding strategies and little down funding strategies so that you guys can start to picture how this process can happen for you, okay? I hope at this point you understand about how I can find these deals. Now you're understanding, okay, this is how I can kind of do my quick analysis on them to understand if I should spend more time and energy, get it under contract, get it to someone who can do real deep dive due diligence on it. And then tomorrow, we're actually going to put that all together to, okay, you found a great deal. It's worth your time. It passed diligence. Now, how do we get it done? Okay. So some of you guys, I already can tell just from the questions and the things you guys, the emails that you guys have been sending me, you guys are ready to do this. Okay. So for those who are serious right now, I want to share something with you. If you guys want to jump into this, check yes or type yes in the chat. Okay. I'm going to talk about something that's actually going to be happening tomorrow, but it's something for you guys to let me know how you feel about the presentation so far. So let me see what you guys get. Awesome. Yes, yes, yes. Awesome. I appreciate you guys. Awesome. Awesome. You guys are awesome. I mean, we're day 2, 3+ hours into all this information. I appreciate you guys. Awesome. Okay. Here we go, guys. So for those of you guys who are interested in learning more about how we work with a select few serious people, the people that are ready to get started doing what Zach has done, what I have done multiple times, and the hundreds of others that are inside of our group. If you're interested, fill out this application, okay? And the whole point of this application is to see if you guys are qualified to join me for an exclusive session tomorrow, okay? So tomorrow, after I do this training on funding, there's going to be another session after that. And if you fill out this application right now and you qualify, you're going to jump into that session with me, okay? And so we're going to be able to have some fun in there, going to answer questions, and it's going to be a smaller group because we're only going to take a certain amount. And so if you're interested in that, I'm going to put it right now. If you go to the offer, you can check it. It's going to be in the chat, and you should be able to see it right now being pushed. You can see a link that says fill in the 60-second application. Click on that. Start filling out the application, okay? We only can take a certain number, but again, if you're interested and you think this is something that you would be good at, it's something that you want to put effort in to do over the next 6 months, fill out that application. Tomorrow after this call, we're going to jump into that room together, and we're going to have an awesome time inside of there, okay? All right. Let us go to the next. Okay, as I mentioned before, guys, we're selective because we want to make sure we have an awesome, tight-knit community. You guys can ask Zach about our community. It's awesome. We have hundreds of people in there that are buying businesses, that are helping each other, that are funding each other's deals, that are partnering with each other. It's awesome. So we're very selective on who we bring in because we want to make sure the people we bring in can get a deal done and can add to that community. So again, if you're interested, check out the link that you see there in the offer in the chat. So to be considered, complete the application. My team and I are going to personally review each application before tomorrow's training. If you qualify, you're going to be invited to an exclusive session after tomorrow's training, okay? In this session, we're going to talk about what it can look like to work with our team and answer your in-depth questions. So that is how that is all going to work. If you're not selected, do not take offense, okay? It's been awesome. I appreciate all of you being here with me the entire time and being able to ask questions and sit here for hours while I lecture about something that I'm very passionate about. So I appreciate that, okay? So make sure if you want to check it out to hit this link. All right, let's move on. Homework assignment, okay? You had homework last night. I promise it's not going to take you too long. I appreciate you. I saw that a bunch of you actually did the homework, which is awesome because you're going to gain so much by doing that. You laid the foundation yesterday. We're building it brick by brick right now, and then tomorrow is going to be that capstone that is going to finish it off, okay? So right now, find 3 businesses for sale on bizbuysell.com that match your criteria. So yesterday we talked about your criteria, the cash flow that you're looking for, the type, all that we talked about. Now go on BizBuySell and search and find 3, okay? You're going to analyze them by using the golden ratio and the 2-minute technique. Use the golden ratio to see the profit margin, and then use the 2-minute technique to go and look at all the different areas. How many years has it been in business? Why is the owner selling the business? Is it SBA financeable, right? Go through that 2-minute technique and then choose those 3 listings. Also, you get extra bonus points if you pick out some red flags. Okay, and tomorrow I'm going to ask you in the chat, who did it? What red flags did you find, right? And I want to see if you guys were paying attention for the things that we talked about. I'm not just doing this to keep you guys busy. I know you guys have busy lives. You have families. You have work. You have all these different things that you can be doing. The reason why I'm doing this is because I want to show you the process, okay? Because if you guys can actually do the work and do some of the process, you can picture yourself doing this down the road, all right? So that's why I'm asking you to do that. Okay, tomorrow we're going to go into the 4 types of funding available business acquisition. So how do we, what are the different types of funding? How do we mix and match them together? How do we get these deals done? We're going to go through that. We're going to talk about funding your dream business with little to zero down. We're going to talk about the SBA loan process. You guys can ask questions all about the SBA loan process. There's a lot of questions about that. Creative financing techniques, strategies for raising capital from investors. Okay, I'm going to show you exactly how you guys are going to be able to fund this acquisition. All right, here we go. Q&A session with me and Zach. So now's your chance to get clarity on any aspect of diligence. You can ask questions to Zach as well. Don't hold back anything else like that. If you have a question, go over to the Q&A section, put your question there, and we will be able to jump into it. All right, so get started typing in there. Make sure that you guys are coming up with some good ones. Don't hold back on the questions. And then tomorrow, remember, complete your homework. Consider, again, with Zach's story, that if you did do something like this, if you did commit to the next 6 months of focusing on acquiring your first business, what could that do for you and your family? And then come prepared. Come tomorrow on time. I'm super appreciative that we had over 600 people join us tonight. That's way more than I thought would come for our second night. So I hope to see you guys all again tomorrow. All right, so let's jump in to the Q&A session. All right, going over to Q&A. Man, got some questions. All right, so, okay, guys, if you have questions that you want specifically for Zach, just put it right in the question, right? So if you need to rewrite your question and you say, hey, I want to ask Zach this specific question, make it so that I can make sure that Zach is the one answering it. If I don't see that, I'll just go ahead and think you're asking me, right? And sometimes I'll point it to Zach and I'll tell him to give an answer because I think he'll be able to give some better nuanced answer to it, all right? So first one is from James. How do you convince the owner of a viable business to sell it? So I'm assuming, James, that you're talking about an off-market deal, right? And so the owner has not formally sold it. He hasn't talked to a broker. You just call him out of the blue, or you sent him an email and he opened it up and said, yeah, okay, I'm interested in hearing your pitch. And so many times you're not going to convince a seller to sell, right? They're already just thinking about it in the back of their head. Maybe they're getting towards retirement age. Maybe that they're not feeling the best. They're kind of, they're getting older and they have illnesses. And it's been something that's been kind of nagging on them, right? So when you reach out in that email and it says, hey, my name is Ben and I'm interested in buying your accounting firm. That's the moment in time where that little voice that was in the back of their head comes to the front of their head and says, yeah, let's talk to this guy, right? So you're not trying to convince them. You're not trying to here's 5 reasons why you should sell your accounting firm. You're just saying, hey, look, I like your accounting firm. I want to learn more about it. Would you jump on a call with me? And if they've been thinking about it, they're going to book a call with you. Okay, so you're not trying to convince them. It's already there in their head that they want to do this. All right, David, how does your course material overall scope differ from Acquisitions Lab in Walker Dybel? So I've not obviously taken Walker Dybel's course. Now, I like Walker Dybel a lot. I recommend his book to pretty much everyone I meet, Buy and Build. And so he's kind of a goat in the space for doing that. So all the respect in the world of Walker Dybel, and I'm sure Acquisition Labs is great. The difference in what I know, because I haven't done it, but from people have asked me questions about this before and looking on their site. The difference is, one, Walker Dybel is not the one working with you guys and coaching you, right? He has a group. He has a bunch of coaches in there, and that's who you're getting. Now, in my group, I do 2 calls a week. I'm answering questions. I'm there, right? So this is very much my group. Second is the way we go about doing this is pretty much holistic, from not just teaching you guys about buying businesses, but we are also helping with funding, right? We have investors inside the group. I know that Zach's looked at deals. I look at deals. There's a bunch of people in the group that look at deals to invest alongside of other members. And we also help you with the SBA qualification process. We connect you with lenders. So we're helping you not only from teaching you how to source the deals, analyze the deals, and fund the deals. So it's very much a holistic approach. We're not sending you different places to do those things. We're all in-house. And so that's one of the things I like. I kind of just make sure that we're all preaching the same message so people aren't getting different types of messaging. And it's worked pretty well. Cassidy, what's been your position on private money versus a financial institution? What are the criteria stack to qualify for a small business loan? Or is it literally just a PG with a good credit score and W-2 income to back? Great question, Cassidy. So what's my position on private money versus financial institution? If you can find private money that is going to give you a better rate than an institution, go for it, right? Typically, private money is going to be more expensive, okay? Typically. You can find instances where it's not, but generally, if you're talking to a private money lender, their rates are going to be higher because they're taking on risk, right? Like they're taking on, and so they're going to pay them, they're going to get paid more because of the risk that they're taking. Now, the SBA is a pretty good deal in terms of rate and the term. And the reason why is because the government's backing that lender and kind of taking away a lot of their risk for them to give you that high leverage loan. Okay. So the lender feels like, okay, I can give this guy 90% of the purchase price because guess what? Uncle Sam is going to bail me out if this guy ends up not paying me. And so that kind of creates a good structure for you, the buyer, because you're going to be able to get a 10-year term or more, depending if there's real estate. And you're also going to be able to get a loan at a rate that's pretty much like prime plus 1 all the way up to prime plus 2.5, right? And so, which is fairly common and fairly competitive when it comes to market rates. So that's to your first question. And your second was, what is the criteria stack to qualify for a small business loan? So it is definitely going to be your credit score. They're going to consider it, right? But it's not the most important thing. I've seen people with just bad credit scores qualify for a lot because they had other assets, right? They had a healthy 401k account. They own the home they were in. Or they had a lot of equity in the home they're in. They own their car. They have some gold. They have some crypto, whatever. And at the end of the day, regardless if they're 600 credit score, that the bank at the end of the day doesn't care too much about that. They care about who you are, why you're a good fit for this business, how are you going to run it, and is there enough collateral in the business and on you to cover a lot of our downside risk? And that's what they're thinking, okay? So it really comes down to what collateral do you have because you're taking a personal guarantee, or how much collateral does the business have? Because if the business has a lot of collateral, then the guarantee on you is going to be mine. It's going to be a lot less, right? Because they just need to cover themselves in case that you don't pay back the loan, all right? Okay, question from Ben. Can you please elaborate on how to see the real, true cash flow? Zach, I'm going to let you take that question from Ben. Can you elaborate on how to see the real, true cash flow?
Yeah, so I guess I would start with a few terms and definitions, right? So we've got revenue, okay, that's the whole pie. Then we've got EBITDA, right? Earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. Why do we care about that? Because it allows us to compare businesses, right? So this is kind of a clean way of comparing business to business. In real estate, where I'm sure a lot of you folks have done research, there's cap rate, right? There in business, we compare EBITDA. And then we have SDE, right? Which is oftentimes more than EBITDA. So the real true cash flow, I'm assuming you're thinking, hey guys, how do I know just how much money I'm going to make? I'm assuming that's what you're asking me. And you find that through SDE. So you take all of the revenue, subtract all of the expenses, then you add back, right? Because payroll is an expense. You add back the owner's salary, and that gives us what's called SDE, seller discretionary earnings. And that's what I consider real true cash flow, because that's what's coming to me, right? And a lot of business courses, they value different things. For us, we care about how much money am I making, and that's SDE. So hope that answers it.
Yeah, great breakdown, Zach. And I think that definitely answered what Ben was asking. Okay, next question. How to confirm actual cash distributions to shareholders match. Okay, so the question is how to confirm actual cash distributions to shareholders match the books. So again, this is going to be very much, you're going to see when you get moving back up a little bit. When you actually get the bank statements, right, and you get to reconstruct their cash flow, you're going to see what enters their bank and what leaves their bank. If they do an owner distribution, hopefully they have a bookkeeper that categorizes as such. But if not, it's easy to see. You're going to see money that leaves the account, and you're going to see where it went to, right? And that's going to be categorized as an owner distribution. So if you have full access to bank accounts, which you will during diligence and bank statements, they're going to reconstruct what that cash flow is. They're going to look at all the large expenses. They're going to categorize them. They're going to tell you, and you'll have a very good idea about really where their money was going. So to answer your question, Ben, when cash leaves the business and it goes to as a distribution to shareholders, that's going to show up, right? And then you have to categorize it. Why did $100,000 leave in the month of May? And what's the answer to that question? And then the owner should be able to say, oh, that was a distribution to myself. Okay, great. Now they'll categorize that, and that's going to count towards SDE, right? It's not going to be seen as a business expense. So that will happen during that. Okay, Al, Ben, what do you stand to gain from hosting these sessions and sharing this info? Awesome. So I do these sessions, one, because I think the awareness of acquisitions as a way in which people can actually build wealth is grossly underrepresented, okay? For people like Zach, myself, and probably a lot of you guys on this call right now, you guys have probably been on real estate stuff. You've probably been on some Airbnb side hustle stuff, e-com stores. All that stuff gets all the glitz and the glamour, right? And no one really talks about, besides a few of us, about business acquisitions. And I believe business acquisitions actually is the best way to go out there and build legit wealth, right? You're not just doing a 10K a month side hustle. This is something like Zach's deal that we talked about, where 3, 4, 5 years from now, he can make some serious money off of one deal, okay? And so I think it's grossly underrepresented. And talking like this and getting you guys to jump on is awesome because, one, I love talking about it. And two, I get to answer your questions and then introduce you to do this if you want to. Okay, so that's the whole purpose of why we're doing this challenge.
And Ben, if I could just jump in here for you guys. Ben is very much like Mother Teresa, like does a lot of like charity stuff. Like he's downplaying that. All right. For me, why am I in this? Why am I even involved? Like the money is in the deals, right? And if we work together and we help each other on deals and we partner and get equity percentages and this sort of thing, like that's where the money is. So, I'm not Mother Teresa. I mean, I'm here to make some money. Like we're here to make some deals. So I just want to cut in and say that like the money is in the deals, right? It's not in the core selling. It's not in the talking about it online. Like that's like very small percentage of it. So.
Awesome. I appreciate that, Zach.
Yeah. I mean, just the numbers don't lie. So
numbers don't lie. All right. Question from Evan. Do you need to know the exact industry you like to invest in before getting approved for an SBA loan, or can you get approved and then decide the industry after the fact? Yes. So when you go through the SBA pre-qualification process, so it benefits you to have some type of idea what you're looking for in that conversation with the lender. But after that, you can go and tell the lender that you're interested in buying an HVAC business. And then 4 weeks later, you have an accounting deal you like and send it to that same exact lender. And he's going to analyze it for you. He's going to say 2 thumbs up, let's do this, and jump right into it. So it does not matter at the end of the day. But when you first talk with the lender, it's just like we talked about yesterday. It's important to have that search narrative. Like, why are you doing this? Don't show up to a call and be completely just ignorant of anything, right? And because now you just look like you're not professional. You're going to be a waste of time. I'm not going to answer this guy's emails. You want to show up with an idea of what you're looking for. It doesn't matter if that changes. It could change tomorrow. But at least that impression was good. And so when you send him a deal that actually looks good, the numbers work, the DSCR works, and we'll talk about that later on, all that works, then guess what? The lender's going to respond back to you and he's going to want to help you with your deal. So it's all about that first impression. So yes, you kind of want to have a direction, but you're not going to be locked into it on that. All right, Brian, the golden rule formula is confusing. Can you please clarify it? Yes, I can clarify it. I did write it wrong in the slide, so that's on me. It's a very simple calculation, but I wrote it wrong. Okay, so you take the cash flow. When we're looking at biz buy sell, it's going to say cash flow. Take that number, divide it by revenue, which is the total amount of money that business is making. You do that, it's going to come out to be a decimal. It's going to be a percentage, and it should be between 15 and 35%. So it's very simple. Cash flow divided by revenue equals percentage that hopefully falls between 15 and 35. If it falls outside of it, if it goes below it, many times just kick it to the curb. If it goes above it, figure out why. Most of the time, it's because the owner's doing all the work. Some industries, that could be okay, right? But most of them, no. All right, so just dive into it a little deeper. Karan, does Canada have something similar to SBA? So they do have business acquisition loans in Canada. I'm not an expert on them. I'm sure there are different terms and rates than we have with the SBA loan. And so, yes, I know you guys have like big 4, big 5 banks up there, and that's pretty much it. The U.S. is much different. We have hundreds and hundreds of banks all over the country. So you guys have definitely fewer options, but I do believe that there is an acquisition loan for you. I don't know how hard it is to get, and I don't know how the application process is. Stephen, I want to make money with an accounting firm. How does that translate into a why statement? So I'll answer the question then. Zach, you can jump in if you want anything else. So the why statement, yes, just like Zach said, at the end of the day, we do this to make money, 100%. If we weren't making money, I guarantee you we're not doing this. But at the end of the day, you need to have something that's a little bit more compelling than I like this business because it makes me money, right? We need to have like, why do you like accounting firms, Stephen? Like, what about accounting firms is good? Why not the construction firm, the aluminum construction firm in Miami? Why not buy that one, right? And you're like, okay, well, I like accounting firms because they're for the cash flow, for the price, it's a bigger bang for my buck. It's recession resistant, recurring revenue, has a barrier to entry. And I think that there's a big play here because most accountants are retiring and a lot of this is coming on the market. And I think this is the time to get in and to acquire multiple accounting firms. That's my why statement, right? I just said facts, right? Yeah, it all comes down to making money. But at the end of the day, it was a little bit more in depth. It looks like I thought about it. It looks like I actually have a plan. And it makes it to where when I tell that to somebody, they go, wow, Ben seems like he knows what he's doing. He knows what he's talking about, right? And so it's not just, Ben, why do you want to buy businesses? And I say, I want to make money. Well, yes, but how? Why? And that's where we dive into kind of what that plan looks like. Zach, if you have anything else on that, you can jump in.
Yeah, I was just trying to emphasize the point earlier, like, the money is in the deals, but you do need to have a strong why. I mean, I'll give you guys my why I got into it. So again, I thought I could apply tech systems to an otherwise outdated industry that was antiquated and give a better customer experience, right? A lot of people working with their accountant, I'm sure you guys have friends or you work with your own accountant and they don't get back to you on time. They don't know any of the tax strategies you want to do. They only talk to you once a year, right? There's all these kind of ways to create customer value and really improve people's lives. And I'm very weird. Like, I really enjoy the tax season and talking with my accountant because it's the most valuable conversation I have every year, right? If I can talk with my accountant for an hour and he finds me 80 grand of tax savings or 100, it's a very exciting conversation for me. And just seeing folks go through that and, we save them life-changing amounts of money. I mean, that's a car, that's sometimes a house, that's sometimes, college tuition. I mean, it's really a great feeling to see. So, we emphasize the making money and all this sort of stuff, and that's important. But, having that deeper why around it keeps you going, keeps you centered, and keeps you focused on customer value. And ironically ends up making you even more than the folks that are just so money hungry. So, yeah.
Awesome. Great stuff, Zach. Crystal, what do you say to the lender when they ask you how involved you plan to be in the business? That's a great question, Crystal. It sounds like you've actually talked to the lender to know that question. So what do you say? Now, when you're having a conversation with a lender, okay, this is something that we talk in depth inside of Acquisition Ace, because this is something that if you just run in hot, you're going to get burned, right? And so what we try to say is when you have that conversation with the lender, don't go in there saying that you're going to be the next Warren Buffett and you're going to buy 30 businesses in the next year, right? Because again, remember, the lender is coming from the perspective of figuring out how risky you are, right? They're evaluating everything about you, your resume, how much money you have in your bank account, what assets you have, what are your skill sets. The last thing that you want to do is come in there just swinging wildly, and I'm going to be the big shot, and I want to give me all the money I can so I can go buy all these businesses, because they're just going to say, okay, this guy is not the guy that we want to go into business with. So the last thing you want to go is go to the lender and say, hey, I want to buy this business, and by the way, I'm not going to spend an hour in it, and I'm going to go make a huge portfolio of all these things, because again, they're evaluating it from a risk standpoint. So when you go in there, this is your only focus. Okay, they're thinking about giving you potentially millions of dollars to buy a business. That means on your end, you're giving this your entire attention. Meaning, when we're talking about a business, this is the only business that I'm focused on right now. Yes, you could do multiple business acquisitions later, but right now in this conversation with that lender, your focus is this accounting firm or this HVAC business, whatever you're looking at. That is your focus. Okay, I'm doing everything in my possibility, my ability to make sure that I'm going to be the best CEO of this business. And that's what you're talking about to the lender. So when they ask you something about how involved you are, it's like, this is my primary focus. This acquisition will be my primary focus. Okay. Now, 90 days or 6 months after the acquisition, and you're only working a couple hours a week in that business, that's fine, right? But when you're having that conversation with the lender, this is the main focus you're going to have. Down the road, we build structures in place to where we go and do this again and again and again, but you're starting out on square one, right? And so you're going to be talking with that, and this is going to be your baby with your full focus on it, right? Okay, what do we got? Anna, how do you structure capital, P&L, or salary of the GM owner to make them stay? Okay, great question. So, and Zach, you can throw this in too, because you're still working with the seller on your end. So how do you structure capital, P&L, and salary? So if the owner is staying on, typically the seller will you're going to offer him a little piece of equity, right? So, hey, I'm going to buy your business, but I want you to stay on because you're super important. You have a great skill set. So I'm going to give you 5, 10, 15% of this business to stay, okay? And for that, I want you to do X, Y, and Z. And you're going to have a very, very line by line, this is what I expect for you to do for your equity. Now, a lot of times, more often than not, sellers will consider this because they're going to get a big bang up front with that when you buy it, right? So they're going to get a lot of money. They're still going to make a healthy salary, and you're going to incentivize them on the back end for growing the business. Okay, so now they can get potentially a nice salary and bonuses based on them doing the same thing they were doing beforehand, right? And they also got a big fat check afterwards. So they're sitting pretty at this point. So you're structuring that compensation plan, and Zach can probably talk through his compensation plan too to give you a real life example of what that looks like. But you can do a compensation plan to where typically it's going to be equity with the seller, it's going to have a salary, and there's going to be kind of bonus incentives to it. Zach, if you want to add anything to it. Okay.
Yeah, so something that I'll kind of leak out as a little secret. Equity is one thing, profit sharing is another. Oftentimes, small business owners undervalue equity and overvalue profit sharing. So if you're interested in exiting for a large multiple or a large amount like I am, offering profit sharing is a good way to kind of retain equity while still giving that incentive. I'll go over my structure because my seller did retain equity, but he didn't really do any work to retain the equity, so it ended up being profit sharing. So we kind of have this verbal agreement. So let's just say equity or profit sharing of 5 to 15%. Typically, if it's equity, you want to have a 1-year cliff, which is, hey, you spend a year in my business, then you get that percentage of the equity. And then every month following for the next 3 years, you would get your pro rata, basically percent of remaining equity. So that's a common structure. And then giving them a healthy salary. My seller makes about $200,000 a year, and then he gets 15% of the profit during tax season. And then that's about it. And then he's got the $550K seller note. So he's got kind of all three, right? He's got the healthy salary, the equity, and the, hey, don't screw this up because you're going to have this big seller note payoff if you don't screw it up. So.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, great way to break it down. And also there's other ways, and to Zach's point, you have equity, which is expensive, right? Because at the end of the day, that sticks with the business. Or there's something called phantom equity, right? Which is more towards the profit share, which just means that they kind of get treated like an owner in the sense that they get to share profits with you. So anytime you pay yourself as an owner, they're getting paid their percentage, right? So, but they don't technically own any equity of the business. So you can even make it to where on exit, they get a piece of the business as well. It's a separate agreement. There's a couple different ways to do it, but by and large, if you want buy-in, you got to give them buy-in, right? So like they're only going to care as much as they're incentivized. And so if they're incentivized with a big carrot, then they're going to do the work and they're going to make sure that they're not going to screw you over. So that's the whole point. You're basically devising a way in which that seller is not going to screw you over, and it's going to make them get really hurt if they do. Okay. Jade has spent some time on biz buy sell. Majority are selling to owner operators. Yep, from retiring owners. which is not what we want. That is correct. Seems super rare that a GM would already be in place. Any tips on finding those? No, you're absolutely right, Jade. That is going to be the rare. Like when we're looking at 100 deals on Biz Buy Sell, we're looking for probably less than 5 that are going to be able to fit what we're looking for. Okay, so this is one of the reasons, as we're talking about the sourcing that we talked about yesterday, we're spending at least an hour every day sourcing. Probably more. Like, Zach can talk his own experience, but for me, like in times when I was like really trying to get a deal done, every spare moment I had, I'm making calls, I'm networking, I am doing off-market sourcing, I'm making cold calls, I'm sending cold emails, and I am building up that pipeline. It's painful at first, but once you do it, over a couple months, you start to have deals coming into your pipeline. And then before you know it, you have a couple deals that actually make sense, and you're working potentially 2, 3 LOIs. It takes time. It's a grind. There's no easy way around it, but you got to put in the reps. That's the only way that it's going to work. And so you put in the reps, and by doing that, you're going to start to have a pipeline full of deals where there is a seller who's interested in being the GM, or there is a GM in place. But you're absolutely right. If you guys think you're just going to be able to go on Biz Buy Sell and click in, I want to make $500,000 a year, and I want it to be in Florida, and I want it to be in these 3 industries, vast majority of those listings are not going to be the right one. They're just not going to be a good business for you to do the strategy. Okay, so that's the way this is. It takes a lot of upfront work in utilizing the strategies that we teach to do that, so that you have an actual pipeline filled with viable deals. All right. Okay. Jade, do you perform one-to-one interviews with team members to understand structure and management style? So if you are under contract, typically you're not going to talk to team members until you're under contract, right? So after the LOI happens, the letter of intent, you made an offer, they accepted, now you're in the due diligence period. During that time is when you're probably going to have a chance, potentially. Sometimes not. Sometimes the seller doesn't want you to go and talk to anybody until closing day, right? Which does happen. Sometimes, though, they're open to it. And so you go there because their employees know they're selling. You go there and you talk to them. The more that you can talk to the management one-to-one, the better, because it's going to give you a really good understanding of who's great, who's not, and already some of the drama that you might be walking into. Okay, so I love to do one-on-one interviews. You learn more in that than you do anywhere else, because employees will tell you things about the business that the seller never will, right? So you'll learn a lot. But in general, it's sometimes you'll have sellers that don't want you to talk to anybody. And there's legitimate reasons for that. But if you do find a seller, take advantage of it and do it. Tariq, what type of access to the business for financials and team assessment should we be comfortable asking for from the seller? And when should we make this detailed information ask? So let me see that again. What type of access to the business for financials and team? Okay, so this is after you're under LOI and you're starting the formal diligence process. It's going to be 30, 45 days, sometimes 60 days, where you have negotiated in the LOI that you have to go and basically dive into every little bit of financials they have, like doing legal diligence, doing everything you possibly can during that time period. And so that's when you're going to be asking for detailed financials, detailed team assessments, and the structure of those teams, and also coming up with a bunch of questions that you're then going to give to the broker or to the seller. Okay. Killian, I wrote a book on SBA, and it references a pretty high cost for accountants and lawyers who will do the due diligence during the acquisition process. The price quoted in the book was quite high for the service. How would you recommend paying for the service? If offering equity in the business is the answer, can you offer future equity since the business hasn't been acquired yet? Since you toss out the majority of the deals you come across, how would you convince an accountant and lawyer to do work on a promise of future success? That's a great question, Kelly. Like very detailed, and this gets to the heart of the matter. So there is 2 ways. I'll answer your first question, and then I'll jump into the equity portion. On the first half, due diligence is expensive, 100%. Typically, you were looking at anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000 for some CPA to do an M&A CPA to actually do due diligence. Now, we have options in the community. We have someone we work with and I partner with called SME Diligence, and they're going to be able to do it for a fraction of that cost. Like you're talking for a QOE, which is the financial diligence, for around $6,000, and the same thing for legal diligence, right? So drastically reduced. But typically and traditionally, you were talking tens and tens of thousands of dollars to do this, because typically people were only doing diligence on kind of middle market deals. And so the deals were much larger. And so spending $25,000 or $50,000, I mean, some of these middle market deals, they're spending well over $100,000 on financial diligence, right? And so the cost that we have, these are much smaller deals, which means that it made sense for us to try to figure out a way to get a much smaller cost. Now, on the equity question you have, on the equity question, yes, that is a way. There's a method in acquisitions where it's called you make your deal team first. So you go out there, you find a CPA that is willing to kind of be on your deal team and do your diligence for you in exchange for equity in what you end up acquiring. Now, they might end up doing a few deals of doing work on it for free, right? Not really free because they're getting equity, but for free in terms of no upfront payment. And those deals might not go through. But the strategy here is you're not doing due diligence on every deal, right? You are doing it only on the deals that kind of go through and check all the boxes of all the things that we talked about previously. So let's say you finally get your deal pipeline going and you end up having 3 deals that finally fit, right? You would take the best one, the one that you think has the best chance of surviving, the best one that you want, you start that process with that and you go under due diligence with it. If it falls out for some reason and the work was already done, well, we have 2 others that we'll then jump into. but you're only doing that after doing a lot of initial front-end diligence before you go and spend money on doing a formalized due diligence process, okay? All right, guys, we're right at 8:34, and we have dozens of questions left, right? So I'm going to pick a couple more, finish it out, because I want to make sure that I'm going to be fresh tomorrow for the last day and doing this again on the third day, make sure that I'm showing up happy for you guys, right? Okay, so let's see. Let's go down and hit one that is good. So we just did Killian's. We got a question for Zach here. So when you own the accounting firm, how much time do you spend on this company on a weekly basis? You can talk about first when you acquired it and then now, right? So you can answer that question.
Yeah, so what I really like about accounting is it's seasonal in tax. So I was able to spend around 20 to 30 hours during tax season understanding the business, watching everything works. And then during the summer months, I mean, there's not a lot going on. So 5-10 hours a week. Things are ramping up a bit more. I'm hiring, getting ready for the next tax season. We're hoping to grow our revenue and EBITDA by 25, 30% here, and then revenue about the same. So that's really where I'm aiming. But yeah, not a lot of time.
Awesome. Okay, so I got another one don't see another one for Zach. Okay, so Nick, in SBA loans, they require others that put equity in, like to cover the down payment costs. They have to secure the loan as well, correct? Yes. If someone, well, not exactly. You can have investors on an SBA loan that do not have to take a personal guarantee. By SBA guidelines, if that investor is getting more than 20% of equity, 20% or more, then they do have to become a co-guarantor on the loan with you. So if you give someone gives 10% and they get 10% equity, technically they do not have to take a personal guarantee. Now, sometimes lenders try to make it to where they do. It's not the rule. That's kind of more lender specific. Sometimes they'll hem and haw. So what we try to do is we make it to where we really don't introduce the lenders to the investors, right? We had a conversation with the investors going over here. They give you the money, and then you go and you get the deal done, and then you have your agreement with the investor, and you have the SBA loan with the bank, right? Sometimes the lenders know that there's an investor, and it's okay. It all depends on the way the lender operates, but typically 20% or 19% and less, you don't have to have a personal guarantee by the rules. But some lenders try to change that. Okay, let's see. Last one, guys. I'm going to make this one count. Question from Dickie, and this is for you, Zach. Are you still working as a software engineer while running the CPA firm?
No, I quit the second I closed the deal, man.
Awesome. All right, that was a quick question. I'll give you guys one more because that was just an easy question. Okay, let's go down, see if I got one here. This for Zach. What's your plan for replacing the original owner when he does retire?
Yeah, so that's anywhere from a 2 to 3 year transition period where we promote up staff, train them on what the owner was doing, hire new people, train them up. And the more systematized you get the process, the faster that can go. So right now I'm just in the process of replicating my sellers. So we'll probably take a step back, not next tax season, but the tax season following. At least that's our current plan. Awesome.
Love it. Guys, I super appreciate you. We still have over 400 of you that are with us right now. It is almost an hour and 40 minutes since we first started. So I appreciate you all. Remember, tomorrow, day 3 is going to be talking about funding. So we talked about finding deals. We talked about analyzing deals and diligence. Now tomorrow is the capstone. How do we make it work? How do we get investors? How do we do creative financing? How do we do SBA loans? What are all the things about SBA loans that we have to do? So tomorrow is the capstone event. Remember as well, if you guys are interested in sticking on after tomorrow's session for a special session with me, it's going to be in a Zoom room. We're going to be talking about how it is to go and get started and working together on acquisitions. If you're interested in that, the application isn't in the chat or up in the offer. Click on it, fill it out. We'll look through it, and we'll let you know the next day. It sends you a link to join us there. So again, guys, super appreciate you. Thank you, Zach, for jumping on and doing this tonight with us. It was awesome. I had fun, and I hope everyone here, it was worth your time. And I'll see you again, guys, tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Have a great night, guys. God bless. Talk to you soon. All right, everybody. Welcome to day 3 of the Buy a Business Challenge. Okay, so I know it's been a wild ride these last few days. We started on Tuesday night talking about sourcing. Yesterday we talked about analyzing deals, diligence. We went and talked with my student Zach and his story, and then today we're going to be going over the funding. Right, so this is the piece that's going to bring it all together. So I'm super excited about tonight, guys. We got great content to go over with you guys. We're going to answer your questions. We're going to dive deep into it. So I'm looking forward to it. But just like we did the last 2 days, we're going to wait a couple minutes, wait till everyone filters in to this room. So right now, name, where you're from. We're going to see who is furthest away from where I live, which is in Southwest Florida. So let's get it going. Put it in the chat. All right, let's see where we got. We got Hannah from Portland, Oregon. Welcome, Hannah. We got Federico from Portugal. Awesome, man. Let's see. Okay, let's see. We got Scottsdale, Candy. Welcome, Candy. Jeff from Los Angeles. We got Micah from Minneapolis. My parents actually live out in Rochester, so like an hour south of here. Nick from Gilbert. Welcome, Nick. Melissa from Miami. We got Steve from Nashville. We have Mike from San Jose. Cody from Vancouver. Cassidy, Vegas, back in. All right. Sounds good. Gonzalo, Estero, just north of where I am. Jeremy from Vegas. Saskatchewan. Gudisa is representing. Awesome. Ashley from Alabama. All right, guys. We got, let's see. Micah, you've been in Rochester for work the last couple of days, so I appreciate you making time to join us on this. All right. We got David, Connecticut. Gary, Maryland. We have Miami, Brendan, Flagstaff. Emily, Flagstaff's a beautiful area. I used to live down in Tempe in Phoenix, and we used to go to Flagstaff for kind of like a retreat on the weekends. Love that place. Beautiful. All right. We got Kevin from Boston. Jupiter, the planet, Eric. Okay, I think you win. Brian from Ireland. One of my favorite places I've ever been to, Brian, is Ireland. I've been there multiple times. The West Coast, Real of Kerry, that area, which I know is very touristy, but beautiful. Been there a few times. Probably been over 30 places, 30 different countries right now, and I would say Ireland's probably my top two. So recommend to everyone in the chat, if you have a chance to go to Ireland, it is well worth your time. All right, Andrew from the Matrix. All right, Andrew, you got the red pill or the blue pill on that. Hudson from Music City. Raj, back from India. Welcome back, Raj. All right. Okay. I feel like everyone has missed an opportunity to say right behind you when Ben opens the meetings like this. That it would be very, very good, Daryl. You're right. Brian, Cary is one of the nicest places in the world. I totally agree. I love it. I love it. We actually stayed in Kenmare this 2 summers ago for a month. Love it. Derek, Sydney, Australia. Okay, you win. You win. You're winning at this point. Tay from Bay Area. Welcome, Tay. All right. Roland from the Houston, I'm guessing Houston, Texas, HTX on that. All right, guys, still piling in, making sure. We're going to see. My goal tonight is to get over 500 people every single night. I think on night 1, we started over 700 people. Night 2, over 600 people. Night 3, if we get over 500 people, that means that the majority of you guys have been able to walk through all 3 days and steps when it comes to business acquisition. So I'm super excited about that. Let's see if we can hit that. We're already at 340. Let's see if it keeps on going. Connemara is the most beautiful spot in Ireland. I have not been there, but I'm sure that you're right, Fergus. I've only been there twice, right around the ring both times. I've been to Dublin too, but it's I enjoy the countryside much more. Awesome. All right, guys, we are hitting that 3:05. So I'm going to get started, and if you're not in already, they're going to join right in the middle, but I'm not going to slow down. We're going to get this thing started. All right. Let's do it. Okay, here we go. Day 3, zero down funding strategies, how to finance your dream acquisition using other people's money and all the other strategies that come along with it. All right, so guys, this is the final day. I feel like I'm getting to know your names in the chat because a lot of you guys are the same ones who showed up on Tuesday night, Wednesday night, and now tonight. I appreciate you guys taking time away from your family. Some of you guys out there have kids. You have other things to do. You have work, but yet you're here. And it's showing that you're putting in the effort to learn something new and something that you think could potentially be something that you're going to be able to grow life-changing wealth with. So I appreciate you being here. Now in today's training, we're going to learn how to acquire a business with little to zero money out of pocket and how to close on your next deal in the next 90 to 120 days. So we're going to be unlocking some practical strategies. We're going to go through the 3 funding myths that hold 99% of people back. 4 pillars of funding. We're going to look at all the different ways in which we fund deals. And you're going to go through each in detail so that you guys can understand how do we go about doing this acquisition strategy. And then zero down strategies. So of course, that's a topic that people want to learn about and know about. So we're going to dive into it. We're going to go through zero down strategies and how you're able to do this with little to zero out of pocket expense. Also, we're going to go through creative financing. We're going to talk about multiple different ways in which we can structure these deals. So it's not just SBA, it's not just seller financing, but we're learning how to mix all of them together, right? And the goal is to use the most amount of leverage we can to where we get the best ROI, but yet we're covering our downside. Okay, and that's kind of how the magic happens when you're trying to put these things together. Now, we're also going to go through a 90-day action plan, right, which is the steps to secure funding so that you guys can close your first deal. So by the end of today, the third day, the final day, you're going to have a clear, actionable plan to go out there, find your deal, analyze the deal, and fund the deal, all right? Those 3 steps. Now, whether you're starting with 20K, 50K, 100K, $1 million, You guys are all doing the same exact strategies that can work for every single one of you. Now, let's talk about where we've come, okay? Day one, we learned about how to find the acquisition target you're looking for, right? How to define your cash flow target, know what type of industries to look at. We talked about the core 3 pillars, right? Recession resistance, recurring revenue, barrier to entry. We talked about all those things. Day two, we talked about gaining skills to analyze deals like a pro, right? And avoid mistakes. We talked about my $150,000 mistake that I made by not doing due diligence. I hope you guys took that to heart because it's a painful lesson for me. So already, through day one, through day two, you're already about 99%, ahead of 99% of other people who even think they have an understanding about business acquisition, okay? So today we're gonna go through the last part. Now, remember yesterday, I put out there that there was homework. We talked about the whole due diligence yesterday, and we talked about how you go into biz, buy, sell, look at 3 different deals that kind of fit. You use the golden ratio, you use the 2-minute deal analysis, all those things, okay? So right now, in the chat, I want to see if you guys did some homework. So if you did the homework, and I know some of you are busy, so there's no shade thrown at anybody who didn't do the homework, but I would love to see anyone who wants to share some of their deal analysis. So what I'm looking for is you could just write in the chat, yes, I did find 3 deals on Biz Buy Sell or any other site that matched the golden ratio, which was the profit margin between 15 and 35%, and I was able to go through those listings in a pretty fast way because I knew what to look for. So if that was you, just say, I did it in the chat. Just say, I did it, and I'm trusting you. I'm not going to check your work right now because there's a lot of you guys on here. We're almost at 400 people. The goal is to hit 500, so just say, I did it for 3 deals. I did it. All right, Jay already got Sims back. All right, Jay, way to go, man. All right, found 2. Good job, Carrie. Chris, 3. Okay, wow. Okay, guys, you did it. You absolutely did it. Oscar Irrigation Company, 800K plus in cash flow. All right, you got my attention on that deal. Cheyenne, I did it. Great job, Cheyenne. Sunny, great. Julie, I tried. Hey, that's what we're asking, right? This is a marathon. This is not a sprint. This is you going out there and putting in the work. So there's no harm and there's no foul in going out there and trying. Good. All right, I did it for 4 deals, Darren. All right, overachiever there, man. Damien did it. Only 1 company that met the ratio. Okay, well, that's good. See, that's big, Damien, because you went out there and you utilized the analysis techniques we gave you, and you were able to cross off deals that didn't fit it. Okay, that's exactly what you should be doing. Every deal should not be good. Most of the deals are not going to be good. 80% of the deals you find online are not good. It's the 20% that are. So you're doing a good job by learning how to use the filter. All right, guys, keep on putting it in there. Good. I had trouble finding any that had a GM or owner that wanted to stay on. Yep, Daryl, that's the key. We're looking at literally for less than 5 businesses per 100 we look at. They're going to fit the exact model, which is why we do this. Right? It takes time. It takes time to build that pipeline, but the goal is to make that you have multiple deals that start to fit that exact search strategy that we're looking for. All right, good. Gary, I did do it due to 2 young kids. I know exactly how you feel, man. Good. Okay. All right, guys. I feel good. I feel like most of you guys actually did the work. That pumps me up. So let's do it. Move on. Okay, so let's now go into funding. What is it? Okay, leveraging other people's money, which is what OPM stands for, to acquire larger, profitable business for little to no money out of pocket. Okay, so we're going to talk about all the different ways in which we can leverage OPM, other people's money. We're also going to talk about how we're going to be leveraging banks, right? The SBA program, which is what most of us use, especially on our first acquisition. And then we're going to dive into seller financing. And it's really important to really understand these funding mechanisms because you're going to be able to use this to gain a competitive advantage when you're in negotiations. Now, before we dive into the funding strategies, let's talk about 3 common myths, okay, that stop people from even going down this path, okay? These are questions that we constantly get. These are objections that people, when they learn about this, that they always throw out there. And I want to hit them head on so that you guys, if any of you have it, we can dispel them and we can move on to actually talking about how we're going to be funding these deals. Okay. Number 1, using debt is too risky to buy a business. Okay. And the reality is smart debt. Now, not all debt is the same, just like everything in life. Okay. There's good debt and then there's very bad debt. All right. And we're focused on using smart debt, which means that we're analyzing the numbers. We know the data. We are picking a business that has shown a track record of years, over 5, right? That's the minimum. But a lot of times we're looking at businesses that are over 10, 20 years of data showing they're making a profit. So this is a known entity that has been churning out cash flow year after year after year, right? So taking debt to buy a company like that, and you're going to be inheriting the same team that's been working in that company for the last decade making money. That is a smart debt decision. That is not a stupid debt decision. Okay, there's a lot of reasons to take out the people that take out stupid debt. That is not one of them. Okay, now remember, 95% of startups fail within the first 5 years. In the first 5 years, 95% of businesses that start out, they fail because guess what? It's hard to go from 0 to 1. It's very hard. And some of you on here, I know you guys have done your own businesses, you've done startups, and you know how hard the grind is. 95% of acquisitions after 5 years have succeeded. All right, and this is using SBA data. So these are business owners that took out an SBA loan, they bought a business. 5 years later, they're still making payments. Okay, they're still running that business, they're still making cash flow. Okay, so it's literally the inverse of what happens in startups. So which one sounds riskier? And it's obviously should be a very plain answer, which is the riskier is going startup route. I'm not throwing shade at anybody who's starting their own business. I've done it myself. Okay, but if I'm looking at it from a risk perspective, one is definitely more risky than the other. Now, investing your own capital into an unproven venture and building it from scratch is one way. Or you can invest your own money, a bank's money, or other person's money into buying an existing business with an existing team, with existing cash flow, with existing reviews, with existing products, with existing services. Okay, that's already been proven to be successful. That is what we're going after. All right, number 2, I will qualify for a business loan. Now, there are more options than you think, okay, when it comes to business loans. Now, SBA loans have more flexible requirements than you might expect, especially from a government-backed loan program. Now, seller financing, it doesn't require any check at all because it is directly between you and the seller. You guys can come up with whatever terms you want. He can pay you back in gold. He can pay you back in Bitcoin. You can make whatever terms you want when it comes to a seller finance loan because it's only between you and the seller. No third parties involved. The bank's not involved. The government's not involved. It's just between you and the seller. And then alternative funding methods exist almost in every situation. Okay. So a lot of people ask me questions about, hey, I have a bad credit score. I've had a bankruptcy years ago, or I don't have a huge amount of assets, and they think that that's going to stop them from going out and being able to qualify for a business loan. Now, I can tell you right now, we have hundreds and hundreds of students in the program. Now, one person has not qualified through the SBA. Now, to caveat that, everyone qualifies for a different amount. Some people qualify for a little, some qualify for the max of 5 million, right? But everyone is qualified, right? We walk through the process and how to go through that. Now, when we're looking at this, it's important to know that lenders care more about the business that you're buying than they do necessarily about you. That doesn't mean they don't care about you. They care about your resume, they care about who you are, your background, how you're going to be a good fit for this business. 100%, they care about that. But what's more important is that the business is a good business. They're going to look into they're going to do their own diligence. Remember, they're the ones that are risking millions of dollars sometimes on these deals. They're going to do all the diligence. They're going to make sure that there's a very, very high percentage chance that they're going to make back all their money. So you can be the most qualified individual in the world, the best credit score, the best resume, but if you have a crappy business, they're not going to fund it. Okay. But if you have a great business and maybe your resume is not that great, well, guess what? They'll fund the deal because they trust in the business, right? And they have to make sure that they trust in you, that you're not going to screw things up. All right. But as far as what's more important, it's the business the bank is looking at rather than the buyer coming on. So myth number 3. Bringing in investors means losing control. Now, with the right deal structure, investors can fuel your growth without taking over. Okay, you can maintain majority equity percentage, so 51% or more, right, and full operational control of the business, even with investors. The investors often prefer not to be the person in control because they don't want to be running a business. They want to be a silent partner, and they just want to sit back and they want to get quarterly checks in the mail to their mailbox, getting a great return on their money. All right. Also, picking the right investor is super important. Remember, there's a lot of investors in the world, and this is something that I didn't even realize until I got in the space. I thought finding money would be the hard problem. Finding money is the easy part when you have a good deal. The hard part is finding the good deal. All these investors would be just buying deals if they could find it. They can't. They don't have the time to do it. They don't have the energy to do it. So then there's someone like us who goes out there, finds a great deal, and they're just waiting to throw that money towards something that's going to give them a good return. And this is a actual asset, right? This is not a stock where they have no control over. This is an asset that they can call up the owner and ask how things are going. Okay, so you finding the deal is solving their biggest issue, which is where they can put their money to work for them. Also, think of investors as rocket fuel to go and acquire 1, 2, 3, 4 businesses. All right, so they can help you aim for bigger and more profitable deals from the first day that you're getting started here. Right, and obviously you take the proper precautions, you go through the right diligence steps, and you structure the deal in a way where you're not going to lose control. Okay, we talk through all of this in our program and how you go about doing this, but just to put it to rest, the myth that you bring on an investor and now all of a sudden you have a boss, that is just not true. Okay, truth about funding. Now that we've busted these 3 myths, we're going to focus on how funding is available for good deals, regardless of your background. I already touched on that a little bit. Smart leverage is how you build wealthy empires, right? Using leverage in a risk-adjusted way, using it smart debt, is going to be able to help you build these empires quicker and faster, right? Quicker and also with more impact. You're going to get a better ROI over the period of time that you're spending in it. You have more options and you are more qualified than you think. It never ceases to amaze me when people come into the program and they think, oh, I'm not going to qualify for anything. They go through and all of a sudden they walk out with a pre-qual letter for $500,000, right? And they're like, I had no idea. And it's like, this is how we go about doing this. The SBA specifically, the SBA program, was created for the average Joe to be able to secure funding to go out and acquire business. If you're too wealthy, you can't qualify. Listen to this, guys. If you're too wealthy, you can't even qualify for an SBA loan. I've had students who come into the program, they're going to go through the SBA process, and they share their personal finances with the bank, a lender, and they say, sorry, you're too wealthy. We can't do this. If you're over $5 million in net worth, they're not allowed, right? It's made for people that are not wealthy, right? It's a tool to help them to become wealthy. Now, all right, so you guys are ready to dive in. I see some of you guys are ready in the chat. You're pushing me, so I get it. Let's get to there. So comment 0 down if you guys are ready to dive into the training, and we are going to go. All right, guys, let's go. And we're at 464 in the group. We're almost going to hit the 500, guys. Let's do it. All right, put 0 down there, and let's get ready to go. Okay, everyone's putting 0 down. Let's do it. Okay, 4 pillars of acquisition funding. We have SBA loans, right, which is kind of the gold standard. Most people are using these for acquiring small businesses. We got seller financing, right, where you're turning the seller into your own personal bank in a sense. I'll explain that in a second. Investor partnerships, how do you leverage other people's money in order to do bigger deals? And then creative financing is taking all of those methods and kind of putting them together and using some strategy, right? So each one has its own place, and now we're going to break them down. 1, SBA loans. So SBA loans are one of the most affordable options to get into for first-time acquirers. Okay, so as I mentioned before, SBA loans are government-backed. Typically, they're up to 90% financing of the purchase price, sometimes even up to 95%, and sometimes even up to 100%. And I'm going to talk about that in a second about how that can work. Right, there's some loopholes here that we're going to talk about. Now, lower down payments. So obviously, if it's up to 90% financing, down payment is going to be typically 10%. Longer repayment terms. So typically, if you're buying a small business, the term is going to be around 10 years, okay? But if real estate is involved, so let's say you're buying a business that actually comes with the building, which happens a lot. Well, that real estate, whatever the value of the real estate is, if that real estate is worth more than the business. So an easy example, right? I'll try not to confuse people who are listening. If you're buying $1 million business and the real estate is included, so it's included in the price, $2 million, $600,000 value of the real estate. The business is worth $400,000. Together, that's $1 million. But the business is worth less than the real estate. And the rule is if 51% or more of the value is real estate, then instead of being on a 10-year term, it's now on a 25-year term. So what does that do? It just greatly increases your cash flow because now you have more than double the amount of time to pay it back, which means your monthly payments are drastically lowered, which means you have more cash flow. Okay? So that's what it means up to 25 years. Then there's competitive interest rates, right? So right now you're looking at prime plus 2, typically. That's what it's looking at. So right now it's around between 9 to 10% is what most people are getting their deals on an annual interest basis on a 10-year term. Working capital inclusion, almost all SBA lenders are also going to include working capital because, again, the last thing that they want to happen is they get you to you buy a business and you don't have working capital, right? Because you start day 1 with 0 in your bank. It's a new company. You acquire the assets of the other company, and now day 1 you have 0 money in your bank, and that Friday's payroll, right? And let's say you haven't got much revenue that came in between the time that you took over the business and the day that you're paying payroll, right? That's why we have working capital. So we make sure that the business has enough working capital, and through the SBA process, you are going to get either a line of credit or an additional loan that's going to be included in lump sum into your acquisition loan to use for that. Also, no balloon payments. These are 10-year terms, all the way up to 25-year terms, and they're not balloon payments, and it's strictly just your principal plus interest the entire time. All right, how Chris uses SBA loan to fund a 7-figure acquisition. So guys, this is Chris Chanuth. You can check out my YouTube channel. I have a whole interview with him. As you can see right here, he has a full-time job. He works for an oil and gas company out in California, and he went out and while he was working a full-time job, found a manufacturing business that was also in the oil and gas industry. And he went and purchased it with an SBA loan and was able to still work full-time at his W-2 because he likes the job. And now he's making more than his W-2 at the business that he acquired in the same state of California. So it's about 3 hours from where he lived, and he was able to acquire that manufacturing business. All right, seller financing, the hidden gold mine. All right, so here's why seller financing can be your secret weapon for funding your first deal, okay? And specifically, I'm talking to a lot of the people out there that maybe are Canadian or overseas. So if you're on this call and you're not US-based, you're Canada-based, or you're European-based, Asia-based, wherever you are, okay? Seller financing can happen anywhere because it's just an agreement between you and the seller, okay? Now, it's an easier process because it's just you and the seller. Lower interest rates. A lot of times, even when we do seller finance deals, we don't even add interest rates. When you're in that negotiation, I usually what I do, and it's just a tip. When you do a seller finance deal, you'd say the amount. So let's say it's 10% of the purchase price. So out of $1 million deal, that's $100,000. What I'll say is typically, hey, I'll pay you that. I'll pay you the 10% over a 5-year term, and I'll throw out, that would be 60 payments, right? So it's like $1,700 a month. And I would say, I'm going to pay you $1,700 a month for the next 5 years. And I say the amount I'm going to pay it. Because in their head, the seller most of the time will be like, okay, $1,700, that covers my mortgage, or that covers my rent, that covers my car payment. Okay, yeah, that's good for me, right? And he's not even asking about interest or anything else. Now, obviously, sometimes they do push back and they say, hey, that's no interest. I want to have at least some interest. And I'll say, sure, we can add 3%, 4%. We start to negotiate. But typically, the interest rate is going to be much lower than what you're paying on an SBA loan. Right now, between 5 and 7%. Now, the good thing about seller finance right now is that it shows the seller's confidence in the business. Okay? Think about it this way. If you're the seller and you're selling this business, like let's say you're selling your landscaping business, and it's, let's say you gave a 20% seller finance deal. So out of the $1 million that you sold your business for, $200,000 in the seller note that you gave to the buyer. Now, let's say it's on a 5-year term, and this guy's paying you $3,500 a month. Well, you're still really invested to make sure that that guy does well running that company because he's paying you out of the profits of the company for your loan. If that company goes under, then he's not paying you back, right? That's $200,000. So you're incentivized now as the seller to make sure that the guy who just bought your business is set up for success. You're calling him every week saying, hey, how's it going? Do you need my help? How are the guys doing? How's business looking? Because he's invested in getting paid back. And the only he's getting paid back is that business continues to do well. So when you do seller financing, it's not just good for you because it gives you more flexible payment options and you're able to put less down, but you're also getting the guy who built the business in the first place to stick around and help you because you owe him money and he's not going to just leave. Okay, so think about it from that perspective. Now, it also can complement other funding sources. I'm going to talk about how we can mix and match these things. And also reduces your immediate capital needs. So let's say you're doing an SBA deal and the SBA comes and says, we're going to fund 90%. Well, then you can find a seller note for 5%. Sometimes you can find a seller note for 10% and get it on full standby for 2 years or more. And the bank can count that as your buyer injection of capital and you can do the deal zero down, right? Talk about that more in a sec. That's a little bit more advanced, but these are some of the ways in which we can get deals done with zero down. So when you're doing seller financing, okay, you want to focus on win-win scenarios. And by the way, guys, if you look down how many people are on the call, we were at 504. We hit over 500. Thank you guys for joining me. Pumped. Thank you. All right, focus on win-win scenarios. So we're going to align your success with the seller's goals, okay? So when you do seller financing, you want to make sure that you are structuring it in a way where the seller feels like it's fair, but also it is covering your downside, okay? You want to highlight the seller benefits. It's going to be a faster sale, and you get potential tax advantages, right? When a seller does seller financing, it's better to get payments on a debt note, which is what a seller note is. That get taxed at a different rate. One, they're getting paid less over a period, over time, they're going to be paid more because it's interest. But on a month-to-month, on a yearly basis, they're getting paid less than if they took it lump sum. So the amount of taxes they're paying over the course of time is lower than if they took it all in one lump sum. So if an owner doesn't need that extra 20% or 10% right away, he'll pay less taxes and actually make way more money because of interest over time, right? So having them understand some of those things that are benefits to them. You also can do performance-based payouts. If the business does X, I will pay you Y over the next year, right? So you incentivize that seller to be involved in helping you continue to grow the business. Consider consulting agreements to ensure a smooth transition and always have a lawyer review the terms to make sure that you guys are protected, okay? So you want to make sure anytime you do a seller note, this is a legal agreement. You're going to make sure you have an attorney who's the one who's going to be working with you on this. Now, pro tip, start negotiating when you're using seller financing mixed with other bank financing. So SBA, conventional, whatever you have on this, start at 20 to 30% seller financing. You at least 110. Start at 20 to 30, and typically we're getting deals where 20% around is where sellers are agreeing to do some seller financing, okay? And you can always adjust down. So start for 20 to 30 and work your way down. Number 3, investor partnerships. So partnering with investors is obviously one of the strategies where most people are trying to figure out how to get into this, okay? When you find partners whose goals align with yours, you open yourself up to a world of larger and more profitable deals than you can do on your own, okay? And obviously, when you have other people's money, when you have investors coming alongside you, you're able to get a larger amount of capital so that your down payment can be larger, which means the acquisition target can be larger, which then turns into more cash that you're making on a month-to-month basis, okay? So while doing investor deals for some students is exactly where they want to start, others, they don't want to do it. They don't want to involve anybody else. They want to maintain 100% equity, and that's perfectly fine. But this is a tool in which when you're starting, especially if you're starting out with little capital, if you go and find a great deal, there are investors out there that are waiting to get involved in your deal with you. So how do you find investors? Okay, so there's a couple ways I'm going to break this down. One, you got to define your clear acquisition criteria and your growth plan. Okay, you have to know what you're looking for because you're going to relay that to an investor. All right. One of the things I told people in the beginning, especially if you're starting out and you don't have a network that has, like, let's say you don't come from a family that has money, you don't have friends that have money, you don't know anybody who has money, right? One of the best ways to start doing this is going outside your immediate network, right? Start telling your friends and family because they have other friends and family, right? And so you can spread the word. But anytime you get to any kind of a gathering, you're going out with friends, you're going to a family birthday party, whatever, you're going to church, you're going to your local meetup, whatever. Tell people what you're doing, right? And here in the States, someone comes up to you, hey man, how you been doing? I've been doing well. Use that opportunity to say, I've been doing well, and say, hey, you actually have been up to this thing called business acquisition, and I've been obsessed with it. I've been working on it for the last few months. I'm super excited about it. I guarantee if you just bring it up, most people have no idea what it is. They're gonna be like, what do you mean business acquisition? Like, yeah, I'm actually interested in buying an accounting firm. What? You're not an accountant. How could you do that? And then you can go into the exact strategy that you have to do it. And before you know it, that person's blown away. They're asking you a million questions. They're going to go tell a couple other people about what you told them. And before you know it, a month later, after you've done this with enough people are going to be reaching back out to you saying, hey, I want to learn more about that. Or, hey, I don't have time to do this, man, but can you actually, what about if I kind of invest alongside of you? This is how I raised money for my first deal. I was just talking about it. I never asked anyone for money. I just started talking about what I was doing. And people saw the confidence I had and that it would work. And they were attracted to that. And so they started coming to me and saying, hey, on this first deal, can I throw in $10,000? Can I throw in $20,000? And that is how I raised money for my first deal. Other ways you can do this, LinkedIn. LinkedIn is one of the ways in which I've been able to attract investors. Not going out making a post saying, hey, anybody with money, come over and help me with my deal, but just networking. Look for people that you might want to do with your deal. So you might want to, on your deal team, you might want to have, if you're buying an accounting agent firm, maybe you want a CPA on your team. So reach out to CPAs. Hey, I'm looking to acquire an accounting firm. I would love to get your take on the deal I'm looking at, and potentially open to partnership opportunities as well. We have students in our group that are doing this on a daily basis, and believe me, they are getting a high hit rate of people responding back to them, interested in what they're doing, and some of those people have become partners in deals, and others have just become investors, okay? So utilize all the tools that you have at your disposal. If you demonstrate your expertise and your commitment to doing this goal, people are going to want to be involved in it. It's just the law of attraction and how it works. Also, before I move on, investors, especially when it comes to friends and family, are people that you may know. Investors are betting on you, okay? If they know you and they know that you're someone that they can trust, they're someone that's going to work hard and that they're going to put their mind to it, they're mostly betting on you. They're not really betting on the business. That's for people that know you. Now, for people who don't know you and investors that are outside of your network, it's the reverse, right? They want to know you're good. They want to make sure you're good at resume and that you're going to be able to do well, but they're really interested in the business because they don't have that trust factor with you yet. They want to trust the deal that you're bringing to them. All right, 4, creative financing. So now we're going to mix and match strategies to create different deal structures, okay? So almost every single deal that happens inside of my community happens with a mixture of SBA financing, seller financing, and I would say about 30 to 40% with other people's money as investors, okay? So people are, if they're bringing on an investor, they're using them to cover the down payment requirement that is required by an SBA loan. Now, I'm gonna go back because I teased you earlier about the zero down strategy with an SBA loan. Now, there's 2 ways to do this with an SBA loan without bringing on investors, okay? First way is you get a seller note that is 10% or more of the purchase price. So that's step 1. The second step to that is that seller note has to be on full standby for 2 years or more. Now, what that means is that you don't make any payments on that note for the first 2 years, okay? So it's like frozen in time. You don't make any loan payments to the seller for 2 years. If you do that, then the bank will count that as your buyer injection of capital, and you can do a 90% SBA funding and 10% seller note, and that's it, 100% funded. Okay, one of our students, Adam, did exactly that, right? He bought a almost $4 million marketing agency. He's on track to do $1 million plus in cash flow in his first year. That's the exact same strategy to use. Now, the second strategy with an SBA loan is a like-kind acquisition. So this is for all of you out there that actually have a business. Okay, let's say some of you guys have a startup, you've been doing it for a couple of years, you have an accounting firm, you have a marketing agency, whatever. You can go out and buy the same type of business. So you can go out and buy a marketing agency, whatever the business that's the same industry code as your current business. And if it qualifies, the SBA will fund 100% of that acquisition. 100%. There's no capital requirement necessary based on your business that you have. Okay, so those are 2 ways just by the SBA on its own. So now I see a bunch of people in the chat saying, "Wait, what? Please repeat that. Repeat, please say that again." Okay, so I'll answer the question, Jack, why would someone don't want to do that? Now, there's going to be a time for questions, guys. So I'll get into more of that later. But again, what I said, if the seller note is made to where it's on 2 years of full standby, meaning no payments from the buyer to the seller for 2 years after closing of the business, it's frozen in time for 2 years before you make your first payment, and you have that in the agreement, then the bank will count that as your buyer injection capital, as your down payment, so that you don't actually have to put any money into the deal. That's what I said. If you have more questions, we can put them in the chat for later on in the Q&A. Yes, Christina, same as the NAIC code. All right, realistic funding timeline. Here's 3-step blueprint for acquisition success. We're gonna put this together. So the first pre-LOI phase, first month, this could be up to the first 2 months. This is where all the stuff about building relationships with funders, talking to your friends and family about what you're doing. This is where you're kind of making sure your credit score, paying off any kind of credit card debt you may have, and just making sure that you're doing everything possible to get in the best financial position as you can as you go into the funding stage. The due diligence deep dive phase. Now it's month 1 to month 3, month 4, right? This is kind of a big phase because it all depends on how well you worked in the first 30 days in building up that pipeline. Let's say you did a great job. Now we're in days 30 through 90. And here's where you guys are really going to get into it, because during that phase is where you're going to be really focusing on taking the numbers from an actual deal that you have and now sending them to the people that you want to raise money from. Okay, so you're telling those people and updating, hey, I found that accounting firm I was talking about. Here's the numbers. Okay, here's how I'm going to structure it so that what the cash flow is going to be looking like, and that's where you're going to start to get more in the brass tacks about a potential investment and what they may look like. Now, closing time. This is days 90 to 180. Okay, so we're talking 3 to 6 months. We're talking past that. Sometimes it's up to 7, 8 months. Sometimes even up to 10 months. Okay, it all depends on you and how much effort you're putting into building that pipeline. Now, this is where the rubber meets the road. Okay, because you've gone out there, you've talked to a bunch of different people about what you're doing, you've networked, you have a bunch of people who are interested in potentially throwing money in, you finally found a deal, and you found a great deal, and now you shop that around to the people, whether it's inside the community, whether it's inside of your own personal network, whatever. You started showing them what this deal looks like, they get excited, they hand over their money to you, you put it into an account that seasons for over 35 to 40 days, so that when the time comes for closing, the money's there for the down payment to go and close the deal. So again, some of these guys, as we go through here, you can watch all this. Nick, he's the guy who did the upholstery business. You have Melissa here. She was a former teacher in New Jersey. She was a superintendent, and now she has a commercial pool cleaning business in Myrtle Beach. She's doing $300K in her first year. Again, you guys can watch these. Here's Dave. He ended up buying a almost $10 million fractional CFO, so kind of like an accounting firm, but helping small businesses. Now, let's take a moment to appreciate what you guys have done, because I've been just yelling at you for like the last 3 days, all this different stuff. Okay, and I know it's a lot. I know you guys have questions. I know that we can dive into these things for a bunch, right? So day 1, we learned how to spot $1 million opportunities that 99% of people miss. Okay, so we talked about how do we go out there on market versus off market, writing scripts. How do we get in front of business owners? How do we start to have those conversations? How do we start building up a pipeline? Day 2, we went into due diligence. Okay, this is where we're trying to figure out if this is a great deal or if this deal just sucks, right? How do we tell the difference between the two? What are the things that we're looking for? How do we go and look at a listing on BizBuySell or any other website and be able to tell in a short period of time if this is something that we want to do or not? How do we use the golden ratio? How do we know how to do quick checks to where good deal, put in this pile, bad deal, put in this pile, right? Because it's all about building a pipeline. It's a numbers game, okay? You're getting as many deals in your pipeline so that you can finally get one that meets all of your parameters. Day 3, you arm yourself with strategies to fund deals that others can only dream of. So we talked about SBA loans. We talked about seller financing. We talked about other people's money, investors, and how you can mix all 3. Most of the time, every deal, I would say about 30 to 40% of deals have all 3, and the rest have a mixture of at least 2. Okay, so we use these to kind of craft the best way in order to go and get a deal done. So there's 2 paths here. You got the startup route, which we talked about earlier, which had that 95% failure rate in the first 5 years, and we talked about the business acquisition route, which had the opposite, over 95% success after 5 years. All right. Now, startup route, you're going to risk wasting your time, money, effort. Right? As we all done it, we all try really hard, and hopefully it works out, but most don't. Or you buy a business that already has existing customers, a existing service and product, and it's already making cash flow. So day 1, after you acquire this business, you're getting paid. All right, that is the difference. And when you buy a company, it has existing revenue, existing product, and existing team. The team is super valuable. Okay, the team, the people that have already been trained on servicing the product or servicing their clients, you're inheriting them. They went from working from one owner to now working for you, right? Inheriting that is one of the most valuable things. Okay, we talked about this, business acquisition, 95% success, startups, 95% failure. Now, if you're like me and you see this, then you know that what is the better, less risky way of going about spending money? Spending money on a startup or spending money on something that's already proven its value. It's already been cash flow positive. It's already been in existence for more than 5 years, and it's proven that it's not going to go away, right? That is the less risky path. Now, I hope the last 3 nights were worth your time, guys. Okay, so I hope at this point, and I know it's been a lot of information I put in front of you. I do. It's a lot. But over the last 3 nights, I hope that you start to see now kind of a formulation of, okay, I understand broadly all the different steps that are involved and how I can go about doing this and go and acquire my first business. Okay, so if you have questions, stick around. Live Q&A is coming right up. Okay, we're getting really close to jumping into that. So unfortunately, here's some of the bad news. One is I've been doing this long enough and I've been helping hundreds of people do this to where I know 95% of you guys are going to take this information, you're never going to do anything with it, okay? And that's fine because this is not for everybody. This is hard. This is a hard thing to do. And there's some people who shouldn't do it. They should do other things very well. There's some people who should do this because this is the best path for them, okay? But putting this into action is what is going to make the difference. I made a huge amount of mistakes. I talked about yesterday, $150,000 I lost because of making a stupid diligence mistake and not doing it when I knew that I was supposed to, but I didn't do it anyway, okay? Now, what I've done in the last 5 years should have taken me about half the time. I have students that are almost catching up to me in terms of acquisitions, and they've only been doing this for less than 2 years, all right? If I had known these things, if I had had these strategies in place back then, I would definitely be in a different place than where I am today. And I'm not complaining. I love where I am. But I also can recognize that if I had this strategy and these things, I would be much further than where I am today. All right. The biggest wealth transfer, and I talked about this on day one. Okay, so for those of you guys who were with me on day one, you remember me talking about this. We're in the silver tsunami. The baby boomer generation, 75 million people are retiring and they're selling their businesses, with over 12 million businesses that have to be sold in the next 10 years. This is the window. This is the window why I'm going all in on it and why others that understand that are also going all in on it. Okay? There's going to be businesses after the 10 years for sale, for sure. But right now, there's going to be more supply coming onto the market than ever before. And there's not even close to being enough people like you and me going out there to buy it, which means we have the power in going out and picking the best that are out there. Okay, past 3 days, you guys have gone and learned everything that Costco can throw at you. And you guys have done a great job. A lot of you guys have been doing the homework. A lot of you guys have been doing the effort, right? Knowledge is not enough. It's all about the implementation. That's what it comes down to, okay? So if you guys remember yesterday, I talked about that application. If you want to commit to a fast tracking your acquisition journey, and you want to see if you can qualify and see what it looks like to work closely with me and my team right now, you guys can see this link right here. This is going to take you to an application, okay? That application, if you do real quick, now for those of you who've already done it, I'm putting it right now in the offers. You guys are going to see it be posted right now. If you guys want to see if you qualify to work with us, fill out this application right now. For those of you who already did it yesterday, you should have gotten emails that were sent to you and telling you that you've been approved or not. And if you were, we're going to be jumping into that session soon. But if you see this, guys, right now, fill out the application because that is where you're going to be able to see if this is something that you want to take further with me and my team. So as I just mentioned, if you did it yesterday, you've been approved, you're going to find an email in your inbox. It's going to have a special Zoom link. That's going to happen in 15 minutes after we do Q&A here, okay? And that's where we're going to deep dive into what it looks like to work with me and the team and have you hold your hand going through the entire acquisition process. For everyone else, okay, everyone else, don't worry. We're going to jump in to the final Q&A right now. So for the next 15 minutes, you guys can ask me anything about Acquisition Ace, about business acquisition, how to start, the whole thing. When the timer ends after the 15 minutes, I'm jumping in to that Zoom room. So if you are filling out that application right now or you filled it out yesterday, let me know. Not let me know. Just follow that link in 15 minutes time. So I'm putting on the timer right now for 15 minutes. And let me put it on my phone. Boom. And I'm going to start that right now. So we're at 7:50. So this is going to be at 8:05. We're going to be jumping in to that room with everyone there. All right. So turning off screen share, and we're going to jump right into the questions. Okay. So if you want to, fill out the application and then get the link to meet me in 15 minutes. All right, Bo, this didn't work for me yesterday, so just testing is working for me today. It's working, Bo. All right. Tahasi, since Q&A gets filled quickly, posting early. I'm smart. For those of you, who are not ready just yet, but want to work with your team in the future to acquire small businesses, what is the best way to stay in touch? Great question. If you want to stay in touch, the best way to stay in touch with us is to reach out to the email that you're getting when you're getting all these emails and everything else. Respond back to that email and say, hey, I'm ready to work with your team. Okay, that'd be the best way to do it because we check that email. My team checks that email daily, and we'll be able to see that. Dylan Williams, Naples, Florida. Don't know what the question there is. Both Fox for Ben. I have a home address in California, but live in Mexico and work in real estate. My biggest fear about buying a small business in California is that I'll be so far away. I can make trips back, but my goal, vision, why statement is to create passive income in order to grow wealth and spend more time doing what I love. Hence Mexico, not California. Should I let the distance be a non-starter? No, you should not. Most of the businesses I own are in Kentucky, Texas, and Arizona. Okay, I live in Florida. So I almost never am I meeting face-to-face with my team. They are not where I live. So for you being in Mexico and wanting to buy a business in California, it's 100% possible. I would just focus, you have to focus on the right business. Most businesses you will not be able to buy. You have to really focus on the right target. The same thing that I do. I only buy a company if I know for a fact that is not going to hamper me in growing it, not being local. A lot of businesses, you do have to be there. Okay, those are not the ones we're looking for. So if you have the right type of business, you will be able to go out and do this. Yes. Amber, hey Ben, How did you approach the brokers and others when you first started doing this and didn't have a lot of knowledge, and there was a chance that they could tell you were a beginner in the field? Like, did you try to just be yourself and risk being scammed, or pretend to have experience? Great question, Amber. So yes, when I first started, I was just, I mean, it would probably be so embarrassing to watch a video, honestly, of me. I just was asking the craziest questions. I had so much energy on those calls. I would ask them like a mile a minute. So they probably just overwhelmed with just some of the questions I was asking and had no clue where I was coming from. So don't let that stop you. You're going to get better. This is something where you're building up reps, okay? The more brokers that you talk to, the better you're going to get at it, the more that you'll be able to understand how that conversation goes, the more you're going to know the right questions to ask, the right things to say so that you can gain trust and they start to treat you like a professional. The first time you're at it, yeah, sometimes it works. Sometimes they see you as a professional. Sometimes it takes 3, 5, 10 calls before you start to get the hang of it. Don't let that stop you. You need to put in the reps in order to get the results that you're looking for, okay? So just go out there and start doing it. Bo, you worked in real estate. Why do you prefer buying businesses to acquiring rental properties? Obviously, there's a lot of strength in being able to refinance and leverage the funds for future properties. Just curious, pros and cons. I like real estate. I'm not going to bash real estate right now, but what I'm going to say is that me putting $100,000 into a deal will get me at least, right? If I just do everything by the book, it's going to get me $1 million business that's going to be paying me $200,000 a year cash flow. There's no real estate deal where you're going to put $100,000 down and $200,000 a year cash flow. Just unless you're going to do a syndicated deal, and even then, there's no way. Right, so if you're looking for the best return of your money on a cash flowing asset, business acquisition is going to blow it out of the water. So that's one of the reasons why that's kind of my main focus. And then I take some of the profits and I go invest in some real estate. Right, I believe in real estate. I think it's a great way to kind of put your wealth in a great spot that's going to give you cash. But if we're looking at on a return versus return, business acquisition is just much better. Okay, so that's the reason why I do it, but I don't hate on real estate. Greg, if you finance a $1 million deal with 10% equity, 90% SBA loan, ballpark, how much collateral is required for the financing to be approved? So it is not as easy, Greg, to say that since the SBA loan is paying $900,000 on a $1 million deal, that they need $900,000 collateral. It's not like that. Each bank has their own collateral requirements for them to be able to underwrite a deal. Sometimes there's some banks where they're like, hey, we need to get X amount. We need your house. We need your cars. We need this, that, and the other thing that you need to put as collateral. And then I've had to shop the same deal to a different bank, and they're like, oh, your house should be fine. Right, or your 401k account that has $500,000 in it, that should be fine, right? So it all depends on that bank. It all depends on their underwriting standards. They all have their own formula. So it's impossible for me to say how much has to be collateralized. I just know that if you find a business that has collateral in and of itself, heavy equipment, it could be real estate. Real estate's a great one. Banks love that. And you can get a lot of that collateral requirement put onto the real estate or the equipment. Samantha, how many hours per week should we allot to successfully complete this in 6 months? I was at least an hour a day. At least an hour a day in building up your pipeline. If you can do an hour a day, then that 6 month timeline is very realistic. An hour a day. And I'm not saying working on Sundays, right? Because no one's going to be around on Sundays. But Monday through Friday, hour a day. Hannah, my husband and I will be acquiring a business together. Awesome. When getting approved for an SBA loan, will they look at your income as a married couple or just an individual? It all depends. If you want to utilize both your income so that you qualify for more, then yes, both of you will be on that application. Both of you will be doing a personal guarantee. If one of you makes the majority of the income and you just want that person to be the guarantor, then you can do that too. And the wife or the husband doesn't have to be on the application. Okay, question from Mark. Hey, Ben, for SBA funding, if you don't have a lot of personal assets, is it better to pursue acquiring a business with physical assets? Yeah, that is correct, Mark. So you're thinking about this the correct way. If you don't have a lot of personal assets, finding a business that has a lot of assets that can offset that collateral requirement is a good idea. Yes. Okay, Tahaswi, and I hope I'm saying your name correctly. I'm sorry if I'm not. Question: since small businesses do not disclose financials publicly, how do you get the key financials required for initial diligence prior to LOI? If it's a broker deal, they're going to give you a SIM, confidential information memorandum, SIM. And in that SIM, they're going to have a breakdown of the last 3 years P&Ls and tax returns, typically, most of the time. So that's the only thing you're going to get before the LOI. After LOI, yes, now you're having access to the bank statements, their accounts, and everything else to be able to see how much money they're truly making. Dylan, how are we able to fund CPA due diligence analysis without money? How are we able to fund CPA due diligence analysis without money able to allocate to this? If we only have $10K of our own money to finance our first acquisition, and this is less than CPA fee, is this still possible? What if it's smaller? What's small business, low cash flow, and they might not be able to equity stakers? Okay. So your question is, if you only have $10K of your own money, yes. If you have only $10K of capital to utilize, the due diligence that, as I mentioned before, is one of the, for me, non-starters. I tell everyone they have to do it because I learned my $150,000 lesson. Okay. It's way more expensive to lose money like I did than it was to just spend the money. Now, we have due diligence that can be done for $6K. We have a partnership that called SAB Diligence with our group. So for $6,000, you can get that done. Now, that still eats up a lot of your $10K. So your case is all about finding a person to partner with or finding an investor to help you bring that down capital, or structuring the deal where you're doing the 2-year full standby note and you're using that as a buyer injection of capital, right? It is always, you have to be more scrappy when that is what you're working with. Is it possible? Yes. Is it going to have you to be more creative and harder than someone who has $100,000? Yes, it will be. Okay, but it is possible. You're just gonna have to be able to utilize it and be creative in the way you structure it. Okay, let's see. Dylan, what are your top 3 mistakes with the first business? Mistakes. I wouldn't recommend people buy as small of a business as I did. Like I bought a SaaS company that was only doing like $10,000 a month, right? It's like $120K a year in revenue. So it was a very small business, and it needed a lot of work. And so when I bought into it, it was me and the original owner, right? I bought in an equity stake in it, and I worked alongside of them a lot of hours in the beginning to build up that company, raise money for the company. I would not recommend people do that as their first deal. It was definitely more risky than buying a larger, more established business. And I didn't use a loan like an SBA loan. I literally did a consulting for equity deal. So it was a little bit different in how I first got started, but it was a lot risky, just a lot of sweat equity I was putting in to try to get this thing off the ground. Thankfully it worked, and it helped me get into doing bigger deals and doing all the things we're talking about. But on my first deal, I would say I would not have got as small as it did. I can't think of anything else that was a big miss. That was probably the biggest one. All right, let's see. About Jane. Ben, you bought your first business while still employed. Yep. I like to do the same, but working 70 hours consulting. Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm concerned about taking on another 10 to 15 hours on the low end. Any advice on this? Should I be targeting a specific type of business that allows me to juggle the first 6 months? So I ask that you do 1 hour a day. So that would be 5 hours a week. So you can do 10 to 15 if you want, but especially for working 70 hours a week, that's a hard thing to do. So I would just dedicate myself to 5 hours a week, right, and building up that pipeline. Now, should you be targeting a specific type of business? So I would definitely be only targeting and be super, super stringent on only getting businesses where the owner is staying on board and is going to stay on for at least a year, preferably 2 to 3 years, and they're going to be running the day-to-day. Okay, that way there's really not going to be anything you're going to be needed from in the transition. So you don't have to worry. It's still working a 70-hour consulting job. You don't have to worry about jumping in and working 20-hour weeks to get that thing going. It'll be a smooth transition by doing it. So that's the type of business where the seller is staying on. Give them some equity, incentivize them. Don't worry about then having to go hire a GM or train somebody up or be in the office to make sure things transition well. Jeremy, I'm looking to raise $200K from investors for a $1 million business. I like to walk into investor conversations with some awareness of deal terms, but I'm unclear of how investors make their money back. If I gave 15% for $200K, how will the investor be compensated over time, and what should their expected return be? So it all depends, Jeremy. There's two types of investors. There's debt, and then there's equity. Okay, so if it's debt, if they're giving $200,000 in debt, that means that you're paying them back interest on that debt, right? And once you pay back, it's gone. If it's equity, they're giving you $200K, let's say, for 20% of the business, because $200K is 20% of $1 million, so they get 20% equity. Well, they're only getting paid back when you make distributions, right? If you structure it that way. There's a couple different ways to structure it. But you can structure it to where those investors are getting paid back when you're paying yourself every quarter profit distributions. So let's say every quarter you pay yourself $50,000, that's every 3 months, in profit distributions, and they are going to get 20% of that $50,000. Okay, so that's how they would start to make back their money. But if they're an equity investor, if they're doing straight equity, then they're treated just like you are. If the business makes money, they make money. If the business doesn't make money, they don't. Now, there's another structure called preferred equity investors, where they're going to get paid back first before you get paid, right? And a lot of professional investors do that instead of doing straight equity. Straight equity is normally between you and your friends and family, because people trust you and they're in it to support you and to also make some good money. Hope that answers your question. But if we're talking about preferred, that means that they're going to be getting all the money that the business makes in cash flow. Pretty much goes to pay them back their initial $200. On top of that, they're going to get between 8 and 10% pref, which means basically almost like interest on the $200K. And so they're making all their money, their initial investment back. They're getting interest on top of that. And then once you pay them all the initial money back, they still get paid the interest going forward. And when you sell, they get their equity percentage as well. That's what a preferred investor likes. Okay. James, how do you structure the first conversation with the owner? I always structure the first conversation where I am just getting to learn who they are. I just want to find out who they are. That's all I care about, because I want to build that rapport with that seller. Okay, I want to I want them to start to trust me, understand where I'm coming from, start to really just kind of build that rapport, because that is what's going to be able to help me rein that relationship in to be able to eventually, when we go through obstacles during diligence and everything else like that, that is what's going to be able to help me to close the deal. Okay, so that's what I'm doing there. Okay, guys, we're about 54 seconds in before we jump into the other room. So last thing right here, I'll do one more question real quick. Check your email if you filled out an application. If you've been approved, jump in on that link in the next 30 seconds. Okay, we're going to do one more. Hanane, do you work with a lawyer to properly construct deals? Yes, once you have found a deal and that you're under LOI, the LOI, we use a template we give to the students we work with. once you actually start finding that you go due diligence and everything works out, then you're going to have a lawyer that's going to properly craft your agreement. It's called a purchase agreement, and that's going to dictate all the different methods of the deal moving forward. So yes to your question, Hannah, you are definitely going to use a lawyer. All right, guys, we are at that time. We're going to be jumping over to the other room. So for all of you who have that link, start clicking it. I'm going to see you over there in about 15 seconds, and then we jump into that. To everyone else who's not jumping into the room and was with me the last 3 days, I appreciate every single one of you. You guys were here for hours of your own time, taken away from your family, and whatever else you wanted to do to spend this with me. I appreciate it. I hope you take the information that you've learned. If you're interested in this, learn about it as much as you can. Get started with the baby steps and move down this in order to go and get your first deal done. You guys got this, okay? I knew nothing when I first got started. I made every mistake known to man, and I've been able to, just because I was stubborn, get to the point where I am right now. So appreciate you all. I'll see all the rest of you guys over in the Zoom room.